Hello and welcome to our game this Monday morning with myself, Shane, Stapleton and Michael Verney. As ever, joining me here, we're talking all things GAA. We're brought to you by OurGameSupporters.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. I suppose the reason I'm wearing this Wexford 96 beauty from Orga Retro is the old, we're not going to see them again this year, are they? We're not going to see Cork either. Obviously, we had the Tailteann Cup semi-finals, huge amount on. But of course, also on the show today, we're going to have Lorcan Devlin. He's a teammate both in the Owen Rua and Tyrone of Damien Casey, and we're going to be doing a bit of a tribute to Damien. Obviously, very tough time passing away. An accident abroad in the last couple of days, so we're going to pay tribute to him. That's desperately sad time for his friends and family. We're going to have former Clare hurler Colin Ryan on. But I suppose just to start off, we'll look at a few of the comments in here. James Daly, morning lads, not the greatest games at the weekend. Cork and Wexford will be kicking themselves, but well done to Clare and Galway. Hopefully two great semi-finals coming. Lee Chin incident was a huge moment. It certainly was. Richard Hogan didn't see Clare v Wexford, but Cork v Galway was hard enough to watch. No Sunday game trial for anybody last night. Going in hard straight away there, Richard. Cathal O'Halloran, I have to be happy with Galway making the semis, and it almost feels like a free shot against the treaty. You'd never know. Good morning, lads. Mike Sinnott, well done to Clare on a storming finish to beat us on Saturday. Disappointing with Tony Kelly giving Shane Reck a slide belt. I didn't actually see that. I haven't had a chance to review. I was at both games, but such as the running around you do over the weekend, I actually didn't see but I do see people talking about that to some degree. But it was a big weekend of scores, hits, the whole lot, Mike.
Yeah, massive weekend, Shane. Just thinking about like moments of the weekend. Well, one moment was the fact that Bill Murray was in Semple Stadium on Saturday, which was fairly unreal. As a massive Caddyshack and Kingpin fan, I just thought that was great. It was just great that he was sitting there. I wasn't going to go down and annoy him and do some impression from Caddyshack as much as I wanted to do, or my big Ernie McCracken impression from Kingpin. But that was kind of cool to see. As regards moments of the weekend, I suppose like you were sitting kind of similar to where I was in the media area, like that Tony Kelly point where you see him. It's in the 75th minute. He's actually fallen back onto his back, face up towards the sky, catches the ball, and within 5 seconds the ball is somehow over the bar, which is unbelievable. And then probably the Dottie Burke hit, which you're not 100% sure at the time whether
it was a free all day, wasn't it?
I'm still not 100% sure. I think if the referee is not sure, I think you kind of nearly have to let it go, even if it is a big hit. But by Jesus, like it's not as if he hit like a young rookie player. He hit Seamus Harnedy, who's unbelievably experienced, but just shows no matter who you are, if you line them up from a certain distance and they're not ready for it, that's the result. And that was a game turner, Shane. No point in saying any different, because if that was a free in, were they one down, I think, if that went over. But Galway ended up 3 up, I think, out of that same move basically. And similar to that as well, what was another potential game changer, it didn't work out that way, was when Ian Galvin hit the crossbar for Clare at one end, and 19 seconds later Lee Chin is putting the ball in the net at the other end, and you're thinking, oh geez, this could be Wexford's day. But they probably faded a good bit down the finish, and as you mentioned there, Shane Reck was off, Damien Reck was off. They were down bodies by the end, and Clare really saw it out. But it was the two games were both exciting at the end. Quality probably wasn't unbelievably high, but I know it's a bit of a cliche, but genuinely neither will Clare. Galway just needed to bounce back and get a result of some description. Clare, having been patted on the back for 2 weeks, so many things went wrong for them, and they still were able to grind it out, which, like that is the most satisfying win. Forget about winning by 15 or 20 points. And this, like, that's why people talk about like Limerick's performance, the All-Ireland final last year. Yeah, it was unbelievable. And same as Kilkenny's performance in the 08 final. But they would have got way more satisfaction out of, Kilkenny would have got a winning in 09. Limerick would have got a win in the Munster final. Like that, they're the games you really want to win when it's really put up to you.
Yeah, there's a sort of get out of jail feel to Clare in that game, and you do have to give credit to Wexford in this game, like no doubt about it. But for Clare, I'd imagine the buzz in the dressing room afterwards, everyone's got that whole feeling of, right, we were sort of, I don't know, wading through mud in a way. They never got fully going, and I'd say this for both games, that an early goal can really unsettle you. And you nearly need to get ahead in the game at some point before you do settle down a little bit. I do feel it kind of sends shockwaves through a team when you concede a goal after 14 seconds, I think Jack Grealish's one was, and something like 32 seconds for Jack O'Connor. I do feel it very much unsettles a team. And then, like with Clare, in the first 10 minutes, you're substituting a defender. You could have conceded another goal. You're missing 3 frees from your key man in Tony Kelly. Cork, obviously, I mean, look, how much did they leave behind? I think I saw a stat from Kevin O'Brien saying they left 3-12 behind them in the first half alone. So sometimes that early goal can really unsettle you. It's an uphill battle. And I think for Clare, for that reason, the storming finish, the crowd getting going, I was thinking afterwards, it was a bit like, and I mean, obviously, I think the tip angle, for an example here, in 2010, when Tipperary came back and beat Galway in the All-Ireland quarter-final, that set them up for the season. Because Tip hadn't been good in the previous games against Offaly and Wexford, but got through. But then this win got Tipperary really motored, and I think got everybody up to the level that just the manner of that victory, it inspired the team. And this could inspire Clare. But I'll just go through a few more comments. Based off the weekend, could we actually be getting a 2019 rematch? So I presume, is he talking about a final between Cody and John Kiley? Some people are saying, are we going to see Henry Shefflin versus Brian Cody part 3? Adrian McGrath, Shane, if you're going to start hopping up and down about the black card to disguise how insane James Owens was for ye, obviously he's talking about the Aidan McCarthy one last year out on the Ennis Road. Let's talk square balls and Mark Rogers Hurley being held in the square. So Adrian McGrath defending the honour of Clare straight away, and we'll have Colin Ryan on doing plenty more of it. Dahi Burke sending Shamey Harnedy to the shadow realm with his shoulder was the moment of the weekend. Big Earn and Big Vern. Flash says,
Big Earn.
Adrian McGrath, you're at it already. Jesus says, Flash. Somehow Ian Murphy was the only goalie who didn't drop the ball or make a huge mistake at the weekend. That's the other thing. These games mightn't have been the most flowing, exciting, end-to-end. You know, they were riddled with an awful lot of wides and mistakes. But the stakes are so high in these games. You can sort of afterwards understand why, you know, that was the case. Maybe we're making excuses for it too. But you can kind of understand decision-making goes a little bit out the window when everything is like on the line, with almost like they're both really tight games decided by a score. Any little mistake can end your season.
100%. Just on Ian Murphy as well. Whatever about the saves that he made, he picked out 2 or 3 like really good sharp puckouts in pressurized situations. I think Cotton Mannion put one over, and Joseph Cooney, who went back centre back and plugged that hole, put another one over. And
from I don't 40 yards out.
Yeah, and I don't actually think like Joseph Cooney had a quiet game in comparison to maybe earlier on the year. But like he got 2 like clear possessions that I can remember, and both of them ended up over the bar. One from the far sideline and one from, as you say, about 40 yards out as well. They were just huge, and to be able to deliver those puckouts straight to hand in those high pressurized situations, even when there's a press going on at different times, that was kind of the difference between the two. And Ian Murphy probably came of age, you'd say, somewhat on Saturday, because he's probably had his moments at different stages in the last couple of years. But kind of his calmness and a couple of his saves were just, they were probably the difference maker. They probably needed a couple of things like that to happen, because he couldn't exactly say it was a free-flowing Galway performance where, 7 or 8 lads stood up. You were asking me off air, who were the best players for Galway, and you're thinking there's 4 or 5 lads maybe stood out, but there was no one, there was no 9 out of 10 or anything like that. And they probably needed a bit of brilliance from someone, and a bit of brilliance from Conor Whelan to squeeze that ball in just to get over the line, and just to see, even, I know we'll talk about it more, how relieved Henry Shefflin was and how much it meant to him. You could clearly see it, because like if they'd John Milan did a piece in the Independent on Saturday, and he was quoting Eminem and all about, can I have your attention please, could the real Galway please stand up? And like at least they stood up somewhat, and as one of the lads says there, they have somewhat of a free shot against Limerick. Somewhat, yes and no, but they're going to have to play with a fair whack of abandon to have any ambitions of shocking them.
Yeah. Okay, look, there's plenty to talk to, and we'll get to both of those games in a while, but we're going to be talking to Lorcan Devlin of Owen Rua pretty soon. But we might just take the opportunity to talk about the minors over the weekend and the All-Ireland semi-finals that were played. Tipperary are through, Offaly are through. Couple of this is big for the two of us. So the Tip Offaly All-Ireland final is going to be before the semi-final on the Saturday in a couple of weeks' time.
I don't know if that's 100% confirmed yet.
I thought it was confirmed, no?
Not sure if it's 100% confirmed. It could yet be played as a standalone. I hope it is, because there'll be well enough for a semi-final to be well enough seats available. If the whole of Offaly wanted to come up, they should still be able to accommodate them just about.
Yeah, no, it'd have to be at Croke Park. I'd say there'd be no one left in Offaly for that game.
No, the Gaudi, the robbers around Offaly, I'd say they could have open season if they want. The guards will have to be on guard, I'd say, that weekend in particular, because there'll be no one left around.
Yeah, because I suppose just to quickly talk about the two games, Tipperary beat Galway by 320 to 324, and I mean it was a goal at the very death for Tipperary through Senan Butler that decided the game there. Offaly on Friday night in Thurles won by 216 to 18 points against Clare. I suppose just ask you about Offaly. What was that performance like? I thought an exhibition of shooting from all directions, and I'm hoping that that's not sustainable in the All-Ireland final. But some of the stick work and the shooting from Offaly, I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, it's funny, Shane, because the first 10 minutes was really worrying. Lots of mistakes, lots of kind of jitteriness. Hadn't scored. I think it was 4 points to no score to Clare in the opening 10 minutes. We missed a lot of chances, even frees dropping short, things like that. We settled in, hit the next 1-3. Adam Screeney got a goal. It was just so cool. It was so cool. The ball came in, keeper came out, and he just a little deft little flick over the keeper. But yeah, a kind of a pretty solid performance thereafter. Maybe it's funny you're saying all points from different angles, and that I wouldn't say we didn't shoot the lights out to the extent that we did even against Dublin in the Leinster semi-final, and to a lesser extent in the Leinster final. There's still a decent bit of room for improvement there, I would say, and there was a lot of nervousness, you could tell, particularly in the opening exchanges. But once we settled down, it was good. We were. It's really strange. I was chatting to Derek Lynch about this yesterday. Every time Clare got to within 2 or 3, we were able to kill the momentum with a big score. There was at one stage, similar to Joe Cooney, actually, there was a sharp puck out straight out to Dan Ravenhill after a Clare score, and he puts it over the bar from about 100 yards out on the sideline. There was just a couple of big momentum shifting scores that we were able to get. And when you're in a small county like that and everybody's telling you how great you are for the last 4 or 5 weeks, there would have been a bit of a worry about, whether it would have got to them at all. That kind of dirty petrol was gone in the first 10 minutes, and then they kicked on and never really looked like losing the game. They're in a couple of precarious positions, but never really looked like losing the game. And not being smart, this is the perfect final. We haven't, me and you, when Offaly were going well, Tip weren't going well. When Tip were going well, Offaly weren't going well. We have 2 neighbouring counties. I had dinner last night in Riverstown, and the sign for Tipperary is 30 yards away. There's 2 Carrigan Riverstown fellas playing in this All-Ireland final. They live in Tipperary. They're playing for Offaly against Tipperary. Those sort of things don't happen often.
Yeah, and look, we're going to reveal more details soon enough, but we are going to be doing our first OurGame live show the day before that All-Ireland Minor semi-final, or All-Ireland Minor final, which will also be the same weekend as the senior semi-finals. So there's a huge amount going on that weekend. We are going to have our first live show with an audience, and we're looking forward. And we're going to be doing it in the Offaly home of hurling in Burr in Dooley's Hotel. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, that should be great crack. It's actually funny that you should mention Dooley's. I was only thinking how apt it is. The players before the first All-Ireland final in 1888 ate in Dooley's. They got a meal in Dooley's and paraded down the main street in Burr. And just in case anyone is fair enough, the GA was founded in Hayes' Hotel, but the first All-Ireland final wasn't played in Thurles. It was played in Burr. First All-Ireland club final was played in Burr. So we're talking about the real home of hurling. Park Nave Brendon in Mura.
Yeah, well, look, I think the trash talk is going to start here. As Flash says, Verney and Saint on tour. Flash will be very disappointed now if you don't make your way up to this show. Perfect final for this show, says Richard Hogan. I mean, as soon as we saw that it was going to be Tipperary Offaly, we said, look, we've no choice. We're going to have to try and quickly pull this together. So
I hope you're aware you're going to get absolutely booed out of Dooley's Hotel.
I nearly got booed out of your wedding, so I don't see how this will be any different.
Yeah, fair point.
Yeah, I mean, Tipperary gave a brilliant performance in the minors semi-final on Sunday. Like, I was really, really impressed with what James Woodlock is doing. Last year didn't go well. He was appointed a little bit late. Very tough season, hammered by Waterford. But this was really good stuff, I have to say. Just to go through the people who did the scoring, Tom Delaney. And again, Tom Delaney had a brilliant game against Waterford where he scored something like 2-13 or 2-14. Brilliant display a few weeks ago. Quieter in the Munster minor final, but he scored 6 points here in a real shoot on sight policy. I know Christy O'Connor did that piece about Seamus Flanagan scoring, was something like 8 points in 11 seconds of possession or something like that. But when Tom Delaney was getting the ball, I was almost just waiting for him to just pull the trigger instantly, and he scored 6. Joe Egan, Adam Daly, they scored 1-3 each. Adam Daly scoring late on a leveler before Tipperary ultimately went ahead with a late goal through Senan Butler. Paddy McCormick, again, that puck out option, turn, knocking the ball over the bar. Damien Corbett scored 3. On the Galway side, Aaron Nyland. I mean, this guy is another year underage. People probably realise he's a brother of Evan Nyland. And when he's striking off his left side, it's like, you know, 2 cheeks of the one arse. You're looking at more or less the same lad, only a couple of years younger. Well, several years younger, actually. But he is a real talent. 2-11, 7 of those from free. So 2-4 in an All-Ireland semi-final. Rory Burke, the captain, he scored 5. Conor Dolphin scored 1-2. And, you know, Tipperary conceded a couple of goals back-to-back midway through the game. And I just wondered how they'd settle down. And they did, no problem at all to them. Went 6 points clear. And still, Rory Burke put Galway ahead in extra time. I think it was like in the second minute of injury time, I should say. Adam Daly got the leveler, as I said. Joe Egan threw over the next one, and then that goal from Senan Butler at the end. Whatever was going on, the cameraman actually lost the play for a second. Then all of a sudden realised, it's up at the top end of the pitch, and Tom Delaney is feeding Butler for the goal. And just a brilliant way to do it. And I just wonder, and I hope, I'm hoping here that Tipperary have found their way through this championship, winning on a penalty shootout in the Munster final, having to go deep into injury time to win this game. Verney, I think our name's on the cup.
You keep up that type of talk, I'd be happy enough. Flash had an absolute belter of a comment. He said Shane would be like Shawn Michaels in Canada. This is like the Montreal screw job.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Booed out of the building. And like Shawn Michaels did, you'd have an awfully fag and you'd do something not particularly respectful to it, and you'd be booed out of the place. Your car will be egged when you go back out to the car park, all this kind of crack.
I'll be getting a limo down. I won't be getting Okay, a couple of more comments in here. We're going to be talking to Lorcan and Devlin just shortly now. Ufalia has a much better chant than tip, tip, tip.
I agree, yeah. Ufalia, great chant.
A white collar boxing for both of us, yeah. Awfully very impressive on Friday, says Snoop Madra. Delighted they're having success again. Here, Shane, don't be doing Derek McGrath at nothing won yet. I'm only kind of joking, and I think everyone knows that I am. Okay, we're joined now by Lorcan Devlin. Lorcan, morning to you. I know it's been a tough couple of days, and it's obviously been terrible, Damien Casey passing away. Can I just ask you what the last couple of days has been like? And look, I know it's obviously very difficult for you even coming on, so fair play to you for doing that. But yeah, could you just kind of talk to us? And I know there was a vigil yesterday, and it looks just heartbreaking.
Yeah, the past couple of days for myself and everybody involved in the club, even who weren't involved in the club, just anybody who knew Damien, have been like an absolute nightmare. Like, that's the only way I can really describe it. It's like a nightmare. You're hoping somebody's going to shake you and wake you up, and it's somehow not true, or it's just mixed up with somebody else or something like that. It's just absolutely people's worst nightmare. I can only imagine how Susan and Sean are feeling. It's their Damien's parents. It's completely just shocked the whole community. The whole Gannon community, Tyrone, and then Ulster, the whole of Ireland, I suppose, as well. It's just absolutely shocked people to the core, and it's hard to describe, like, you know.
Yeah. And the vigil last night, I think it did look like it was a beautiful tribute to him.
Yeah, vigil was a beautiful, like, to be fair. I'd never seen as many people in our club pitch in my life. It was crazy looking around and seeing people from all over Ireland, like, and I mean that, like, there was people from Mayo there was people from every county in Ulster there, like boys who Damien played with and played against. which I think shows a lot about the man Damien was. Like, I don't know how many times I've went to a vigil or even a funeral of anybody that I've played with or stuff like that. So it just shows what he was, how he was respected, like, for boys he had played against. And like, the vigil last night was honestly, it's something that I never expect to be doing for any of your teammates, let alone Damien, like, who was Mr. Consistency. Like, he was never missed the session, never missed a match for Tyrone in 10 years, which is absolutely mental. So I think that's why you wouldn't expect to have it for anybody like him. It's the last thing you'd want to be doing as a club. But to be fair, it was some send off, like. And I was talking to somebody after the video last night, and they said to me, like, jokingly, he's like, Damien could always get a crowd, like, and that was one thing that kind of was a bit of comfort in it all. Like, it was everybody's there for Damien, and it was a good send off for the club and stuff. But I think there's a couple more days to come that are going to be a bit more difficult than that vigil last night.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is times like this when devastation happens, and I know it only too well on my own doorstep about how good the GA community are for banding around you. And I suppose in the last couple of days, I'm sure that all of you have felt that, both in the club and within Tyrone. Can you talk to me about just hearing the news? I suppose, like, he was just away on a holiday, an accident, a swimming pool, and I'm just sure you just couldn't quite believe it.
Yeah, it was like literally, you just couldn't believe it. It was, that's the only way I can describe it. I know a lot of the boys were at a club GA match. It was the local club in Dungannon. A lot of our boys would play for them, and then even the boys who wouldn't play would go and watch. And I know my brothers were at that match when they got the news, and they couldn't believe it. And there was massive confusion going around the stand at that match. And Damien's friends, like Damien's closest friends, were playing that match, like, and they were sitting there, and the news was filtering through. Like, I can only imagine how they felt. But for me personally, I was in work actually, down at my local gym I work in, and I was in there and I got the phone call, and it's like, no, not Damien, no way, not him. Somebody, no, you got confused with somebody else. Like, I've never seen Damien like complaining about an injury or being hurt. So those things you don't expect, like, especially like, with him, like. So when you got the news, I was like rang about and trying to get some sort of clarity, but then somebody's like, yeah, it's true, it's what I'm hearing, it's true. So complete panic and shock set in, like, and I text straight into one of the senior players. He's like, what are we doing here? And he's like, meet at the club, just meet at the club. And it was like pure shock, panic. And so I left work straight away, went to the club and just drove in, and boys were just standing out of their car, just complete distraught. But I got out of the car, and literally, I don't think I spoke for about an hour or two. I had nothing to say. I couldn't say anything. It was just everything that was said, like, was said without words. You know what I mean? You had nothing to say. But I know I was standing at the club car park, and there's a big corner to come into the car park, and I was staring at it, like, every car was coming through. I was checking, because Damien drives like a pretty noticeable car. He drives like a Ford pickup truck, and I was like, right, surely he's going to drive in here, and it's going to be confusion with somebody else, or some sort of sick joke or nightmare, or something that I didn't hear right, or something like that. And I was like, right, is it him? Is it him? Is it him? And obviously he never came through the gate, or never came through that corner in the club, and I was just in complete despair. But I wasn't believing anything. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't tell you where the time went. The time flew. We were there for like 4 hours, and it felt like 2 minutes, and then the priests, the local priests of the parish, they came down, and then I was like, oh no, Jesus, no, please, no, because then obviously it's a bit of truth in it, and they said a few prayers outside the club, and I think as soon as I mentioned his name, I completely, like, broke down. Like, I couldn't control myself at all. It was just all the emotion just had built up, I think, and then as soon as you hear them talking about him, like, it's just she completely broke down. Like, you know, it's the last thing you expect to be hearing. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, do you want to have a?
Yeah, no, I can't imagine, Larkin, what people are going through there. I know we talk about Damien's hurling exploits, but just talk to me about him as a man. I saw some lovely words from Mickey McShane about him yesterday. No, Declan Bogue wrote a lovely tribute, and like one of these quiet days, he was getting ready to go up with all the cups to his club. Like he was just seemed like an absolute gentleman.
I suppose that's the one thing that Damien has sadly left us with all is the memories of him, and the memories of him are just like, where do you start? Like, as people have been talking about his hurling expertise and all of these accolades and awards that he's achieved and records that he's smashed, but I think all that hurling stuff is like second, is, you know, as a bonus. Um, if he's firstly regarded as one of my closest friends. I think it was nearly a sad thing that I done yesterday, and it probably didn't do me any good. But randomly, I was like, I took a selfie on my phone and I just scrolled down, you know, in your Snapchat, and to see like how close he was to your, you know, best friends list. You know, is he your favorite top five or whatever? And I was like, geez, there he is, and he didn't have to scroll down that far. He was always a text message away from digging you out of a hole or from coming to collect you or something like that. He was just a friend before he was a teammate. Like, and that goes for not just me, but for anybody who was lucky to play with him or to even play against him. But no, Damien was like, he was always like, I described him to somebody yesterday as like the glue within our club and within our community. Like the amount of times you'd see him talking to maybe one of the younger players in our club team, and then he's talking to the manager about, you know, potentially or changing training to suit everybody, or he's talking to the club gym man about the new club gym. You know, he was literally he was the glue that held like small cliques together within teams. Like, and people like that there are just, they're like one in a million. Like, you can't express how big of a hole he's going to leave our community. Like, it's, but no, going back to what he's like as a person, he was outgoing. He was always laughing, smiling, and he was so modest, like so modest. I can't believe it. Like, it's only whenever we were looking back on it, and I was talking to Mickey McShane, and Stevie, our manager and coach, and we were talking out of memory about, you know, it's obviously whenever these things happen, you just start thinking about, you know, what was your last memory or fond times of these people. And there was one I had of Damien, and we had just beat Donegal in the Nicky Record, and we're playing Roscommon in the Nicky Record final in the next week. And our first training session back in Girahi, me and Damien, to be fair to him, he's usually out in the pitch as soon as he's up in Girahi. He's usually out practicing his frees. And I was out doing a bit of work with JD on puckouts and stuff like that. And that was grand. And me and Damien were out in the middle of the field, and Stevie is setting up the cones for the session. Like, and he walks past me and Damien, and he says, "Jesus, Damien, congratulations on the team of the week." He got a team of the week. Another one, like, he's probably had about maybe 20 of them in his career, but he got in the team of the week or whatever. And I looked him, and I was like, geez, I nearly felt bad, because none of the players, I don't think I've ever heard any lads go like, well done, Damien, geez, another Nicky Record All-Star, or another team of the week, or another unbelievable match. It was just like second nature to him. And he actually passed it off. He's like, I don't know who's picking that thing. That's what he said to Stevie. Like, he's like, I don't know how I got that, or I don't know who's picking that. And number one, I was like, my God, how modest he could be. Like, he has had, I was saying to somebody else during the weekend, like, if somebody had even a third of the success and accolades that Damien had, it would have went to their head, and they would have thought they're God's gift, and they would have thought they were somebody. Damien was nearly embarrassed when he was getting these awards. Like, he was just like, oh no, it's, you know, he was always a team player first. You know, I never seen him once, and I mean this, I've never seen him once give off to anybody on our team for not giving him the ball, or for making a mistake, or dropping or misplacing a pass. Like, and there's boys there who wouldn't be at Damien's level, like, and he was modest enough and humble enough not to be given off to them for anything, like.
Yeah, it was yeah. Like it's just when you go through, we're talking about him as a man there. When you go through, then and you talk about his hurling exploits, like his lot, like to not miss a game since he made his debut, to average, I think it's over 10 points per game, and it's probably that modesty and that humility and just a sort of fella that seemed to take it all in his stride and constantly developing himself, constantly developing his skills and all that. It's not, like it's unbelievable. His career is like what he did in the last 10 years is just unbelievable. It's ridiculous. And I'd say you've probably seen him up close, Larkin. Like he would have fit in any big county, wouldn't he, on any of those great teams?
Absolutely. Like, we were, whenever that, obviously before Damien passed, the news about him achieving 100 games consecutively over 10 years came out, and I think it was our liaison officer of the county board, Ewan Lindsay, who would have been a really close friend of Damien's. He put it up on Twitter, and I think we had played Donegal that day in Carrickmore. And I remember looking at my phone on the way coming home, and I was like, not a chance, no way. And I was like, no way Damien has played 100 games consecutively for Tyrone. And then I was thinking, like, surely he's picked up a knock here or there and he's missed something. And I was like, right, I'm going to think of this year. Yeah, he's there. He was there for that match. He was there for that match. He was there for that match. What about last year? Yeah, geez, he was there for that. He was there for that. He was there. And not only being there, like I've always said it about why he's going to training. Like people like always talk about being at training, but I talk about being present at training and actually being there, not just showing up numbers. Like Damien was consistently there at matches, fit to play, and not only did he play, but he took these games by the scruff of the neck and pulled us over the line. How many times in it, like umpteen times, that maybe we probably didn't even deserve to win matches, and he was just taking us and doing things that were absolutely out of this world and would be on any highlight reel on the Sunday game. Like some of the things he can do, like it's just you stand back and just like you can't do anything in terms of a defender. I've known countless times where in training or in up in Givaha at Throne training, he's just running rings around you, and you might get. I remember like my first club training session, I got a hook. I hooked him one time, and I thought, like, I still remember that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's what you're lucky to get one wee tackle on him, and that's how good he was. He had wee tricks, and he was real acute about how he went about me getting them fine margins or getting that wee bit of space to head over a shot on either side, and he was just like, that's what I'm saying. Like the fact that I can remember my first club training session, I hooked him like. And he missed, but he probably scored about 2-4 off me or something like that in the space of 5 minutes, But like, that's the type of man he was. That's how good he was. You just stand back and watch, and you're like, Jesus, like, that's Damien, yep, that's him. And sometimes it was taken for granted, and now you're looking back, like, nearly regretting not putting him in the back enough and telling him how much he means to us. Like, it's just so sad, but. There's not much really as you can say. It's just we're going to be completely without him. We're going to miss every part of him, like, and he was just so important to us. And even like there was things he'd do in training, and then he would come up and tell you, like, say if you were marking him, he'd give you help to mark him. Like he was telling me one time, he was like, I was marking him, I can't remember when, but a couple of times, and I would try and break the ball because his catching ability was out of this world, and so I was like, right, I'm breaking everything. I'm going to break it, and maybe I might be a wee bit faster than him or on the ground, like, And I was like, right, because he's obviously taller, I'm going to break everything, get to the ground, and try and win the breaking ball. So I remember trying to break everything, and I was going up and I was smashing it, like, and he would just put the hand up over the back, like up there, and just catch it, and he always protected his hand all the time, but he always said to me, he came to me after training, he goes, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm trying to break the ball. And he'd be like, no, don't be trying to absolutely smash it. Just flick it. Just literally don't go up with a swing. Just go up and like put your hurl in front of my hand, and you'll do it every time. And it's basically what boys have done. I've tried to do to him, to go up and try and break everything, and he's been able to just leave out her there because of his sheer strength and size. He'll be able to hold them off and catch the ball. When he came up to me, he's like, "Just do this here," and it helped. And it, like, I don't think I've ever told anybody or give anybody advice to how to mark me or get the better of me like us. Like, he was just doing that for helping me become a better person, a better hurler, and for us as a team we become better and win more matches. Like, that's them's the small wee like memories that I'm gonna take, and they'll they'll not uh, they'll not leave me for a long, long while. Like, and they'll probably never leave. And it's I suppose it's the only comfort you can really have at the minute is the memories and the way he made you feel when he was around you, and the how welcome he was to other people, and just all them small things that are just they're are a bit of comfort at this awful, awful time.
Well, look, I think it's been incredibly brave of you to come on, Lorcan, and talk about it, because no doubt this has been a horrible time, and we wanted to do him justice with a bit of a tribute, and I think you've more than done that. So really, really appreciate you coming on, Lorcan. And look, it's going to be tough, and that's not going to change. But again, thank you for coming on.
Cheers, lads. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lorcan. Good man.
Okay, so obviously devastating time, and look, I suppose you're part of the committee that gets involved with the Nicky Rackard All Stars and so on. And so look, he's a shoe-in before you even start, and that's not just because all of a sudden this has happened. He was a shoe-in anyway.
Yeah, he's going to be a shoe-in on that Champion 15 team, and he's probably going to be a shoe-in to be Nicky Rackard Player of the Year. So hopefully he'll be honoured in some sort of special way. That was, as Flash says there, it was a lovely remembrance of him. I kind of even just getting goose pimples even here talking about, just so raw and such an honest kind of thing for Larkin to do, to come on, because people do need to hear about these people, because we don't know intimately about him, and what sort of a fella he was, and it's just great to hear that. And even that story there about basically showing another fella how to stop him, because it'll help him stop someone else and help Tyrone or Owen Rua win a game. Just shows the size of the man. Like, so yeah, just that was a lovely tribute, and I can't imagine how difficult I think that must have been for Larkin to do.
Yeah, incredibly impressive from Larkin, and it does feel trite to go ahead and start talking about GA as well. But look, I suppose that's where we are here for that. But certainly, we want to express all our condolences to Damien's friends and family. Horrendous time for everybody there, and
just in Dungannon, Shane, as well. Like, there's so many people up in Dungannon that are big fans of the show as well. Like, just big GA men and women, big, massive hurling community up there. And just offer our condolences to Damien's family and all the people up in Dungannon and around Tyrone GA.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Damien was a huge lover of hurling, no doubt about that. So I suppose, look, we'll dedicate the show to him, whatever that amounts to. I'm not sure, but either way, we'll dedicate the show to him. I suppose something that we might as well just talk about Cheddar Plunkett. He's moved on from Laois. I suppose a couple of the years in his return to the seat have been riddled by COVID. That's been the case for an awful lot of managers, and no doubt he would have liked to have had more work with the players in that time, but bit of a disappointing year this year, trying to build on what was done with Eddie Brennan a couple of years ago. But I suppose he said in his statement, they had so many injuries this year, and this is the case for a couple of teams. It was very, very, it was going to be tough for them to compete. And he goes, as part of the statement, looking out in the Leinster final recently and looking at both teams, thinking, what if either of those teams were missing half of their outfield key players in this game? How would they perform, and what would the result be? Against Kilkenny in this year's championship in Nolan Park, Laois were missing 7 starting outfield players through injury: Willie Dunphy, Picky Maher, Podge Delaney, Roddy King, Dermot Conway, Ben Conroy and John Lennon, with Podge and John being our joint team captains. And against Galway 2 games later, we're still missing 7 starting outfield players. So, like, if you are being realistic, it was going to be very tough for them to compete against these top teams that week after week are not only looking to beat you, but to bolster their score difference.
Yeah, 100%. It's no team can really afford to be without 5 or 6 kind of marquee players, let alone just 5 or 6, good outfield players that are going to be on your team. And the Leinster round robin is so unforgiving in that respect. Like, Galway and Kilkenny can go deep into their panel if they're missing a couple of players. Laois and the Westmeath, it's going to be much more difficult. But probably a difficult 2 years, I'd say, for Cheddar. The first, when he finished up the first time, there would have been probably maybe a lot of fond memories around his reign and that famous win over Offaly. Probably in the second stint, there was probably no big kind of statement win, I'd say. Like they had the probably chance against Waterford in the qualifiers last year was probably the one, really. And that got away from them. And then Waterford ended up getting all the way to the All-Ireland semi-final after having... Like they nearly beat the All-Ireland finalists of the previous year in the qualifiers. And this year was just really disappointing. There's no point in saying any different. But obviously the caveat of missing players. Every team is missing players at different stages. But I remember chatting to Ross King about it last year. Like he just said, I don't know what it is. Everybody gets injuries, but we just seem to get more than others. And I don't know if there's an underlying thing there or what, but it definitely undermined his reign somewhat. And disappointing way for his second stint to finish.
Yeah, but maybe a lot of it is down to the amount of games that teams are having to play in a short period of time. You're going to have pre-season competitions. You're going to have a lot of training and the periodization. You're going to have challenge matches, training games within matches. You've got your Division B campaign, which is 1B campaign for them. Obviously, you look at the amount of injuries that Limerick would have had. You hear Dara Egan talking about running out of bodies in their defeat to Clare over the weekend. Teams are having to play a huge amount of games. Like they lost all 5 of their Leinster Championship games. So that's a huge amount of games. 5 there. You had all the league games. You had 5 plus the relegation game as well. Sorry, no, they didn't because they beat Antrim in the group stage. But it just shows that maybe playing so many games in a short period of time is leading to injury profile for a lot of teams. Do you think there's an issue with that? But like there is talk about the calendar and all that, but it's an awful lot of games.
Yeah, it is a fair whack of games. They even played I was going to say they played a relegation game in Leinster. They didn't. That was just their last game against Westmeath. But there's a fair whack of games kind of running into each other there. And you're kind of thinking with the league, like I'm not sure if the league is good preparation for championship now. In a way, it's probably nearly too condensed. You'd probably be better off with maybe 3 to 4 games and then be ready for championship and maybe another gap weekend in between where you can get a bit of training done or whatever. But it's, yeah, for a shallow squad, you just won't get away with having a shallow squad at this stage because you're going to have to go really deep into reserve. What might be your 26th best player on paper going into the championship, if everybody is fit, he could be the player that's starting in a pivotal position in your last Leinster game or your last Munster game, and you need him to be able to do a job. So it's kind of a difficult one in that respect. And as we know, like Lee should be similar to Offaly. Like they're not overflowing with hurlers either. They're not overflowing with choice, maybe like some other counties are. So it's been a hard kind of 2 years, where like if you look at like Wexford gave them an awful hiding in the Leinster Championship last year, like an awful beating. Wexford hit them for 6 goals again this year. I think even like Westmeath decide whose side they would say they're probably 50-50 with, like really gave them it was a bit of an annihilation by the end of it in that last Leinster game as well. So probably a sign of maybe where Laois are, but obviously with the caveat of the missing bodies as well.
Yeah, James Daly wonders when will you have details for the night in Burr, lads? Definitely heading up from County Limerick for that.
Good man, James. That's the job. I tell you, there might be a fellow Limerick colleague there on the night. You wouldn't know.
Yeah, well, look, we're pulling together some of the details at the moment, so we just want to have a little bit more flesh on the bone. We've lots of people kind of lined up for this. We've a lot of the details lined up, but we just want to get a couple of more T's crossed and a few more I's dotted before we start nailing our colours to the mast. But it is going to happen Friday, July 1st, and it's going to be a big one, I think.
Yeah, we'll definitely have all the details for Thursday's show, or even potentially even before then. But definitely we will have all the details there, and you'll be able to get your tickets and be sorted well in advance. And we'd love to. It'd be great to meet all. It'd be great to meet Flash in person. It'd be great to meet. It'd be great to meet all these boys in person. Sean O'Sullivan, SSRI, Boom Boom, all the boys. It'd be great to have you all there in person.
Yeah, I've run into one or two.
Butler, I said to you, Shane, before, we should have a Christmas party sometime with the OurGame Supporters Club. That would be some crack now. That'd go on for about 3 or 4 days, I'd say.
Yeah, I ran into one of them, Garrodo go crack on there one day just before a Dublin-Kilkenny match in Parnell Park as well. So let's get a few more of the boys up for this one. Boys and girls, I should say. Nasa Coyne is another person who comments regularly. Do you know what I want to talk about with GAs? I think there's too much diving going on. I think it's driving me nuts at this stage. Player goes into contact, there's a slight bit of a push or an arm across or something like that, they put the arms up in the air and almost stop up, and the referee's falling for it. Now, Colm Lyons, to be fair to him, a good few times just said, will you get on with it here? And John Keenan, obviously, in the Munster final, he was saying, on you go, boys. But I think there's too much of it. Like the Offaly Clare match the other night, I thought it was a bit too whistle happy. Not necessarily for the whole putting the hands up in the air and stopping for free, but I just think across the board, this crack of a player goes into contact already with their arm in like that, waiting for a tiny bit of contact, the arm to take a small little jolt and stop for free. It's driving me insane. These are physical games. It is war out on the pitch. We have to stop giving frees for every tiny little thing.
I kind of find myself like you. I kind of find myself when someone goes into attack and I'm like, don't buy it, don't buy it, don't buy it. And then when the referee doesn't buy it, you're kind of delighted. I'm hoping, Shane, that we're going to get to the situation where referees are just going to penalise lads that are looking for frees. And I think it might take a while, but I think we're getting a little bit closer to that. At underage games, that probably hasn't happened yet. The difficulty with underage games is that there's assessors in the stand assessing them. They're kind of refereeing for their future somewhat, and that they have to tick all these boxes. Like a brief aside, like I had heard, like it's obviously not totally confirmed, but I had heard that John Keenan got a bit of a telling off for his Munster final performance. And if that's the case, and it's, you know, because of things that he missed on the day, when there's this frenetic thing like going on, how would you see everything that's going on, how fast the ball is moving? You said about Christie's piece about how quick the ball has been moved from people's hands and how much time they have on the ball. Like, think of how little time the referee has to make a decision. I have to say, I thought he gave an absolutely masterful performance and played into like one of the great games, one of the best games I can remember nearly in my lifetime, I'd say. So, you know, we're kind of treading a thin line there between whether referees are refereeing to the letter of the law or whether they're refereeing at, you know, and there's a bit of interpretation there to make it as great a spectacle as possible for me, you, and everybody else that's watching. But I'm hoping we're getting closer to the situation where referees will nearly penalise lads that are looking for frees now, because as you said, nearly every time they're going into contact, they're looking for it. The only way to stop it is to, you know, over carrying, simulation or whatever it is, free in the other way, and then that's that, and people will stop doing it fairly quickly.
Yeah, if you're being held, you need to put your arms up to make it obvious to the ref. Some referees won't give the foul, otherwise that's Andrew Sullivan. I do agree with you there, but the referee doesn't have to buy it, because sometimes it is a free and putting your arms up, you know, does draw the ref's attention to it. But it doesn't mean that the referee is naturally compelled to blow his whistle because of it. Because sometimes a player goes in, like an arm comes across them, but they still ride the tackle and they're clear, and the referee still gives the free anyway. If the player gets free, just allow the play to continue. You know, give it a couple of seconds.
That's a killer. No, I just like, there's no need to blow the free. He's, you know, it's open play. Even there was one yesterday in the Tailteann Cup. There was a ball played into Niall McNamee, and he was fouled. But literally a second later, the ball had bounced to Rory McNamee, who was incoming on goal. And just give it a couple of seconds. If, you know, Matthew O'Hanlon is breaking a tackle and he's fouled along the way, but the tackle is, like, he rides the tackle and he's 40 metres out. He doesn't want to free from there. He wants momentum. He wants to carry the ball. Just let it go when you can. Sometimes I think we're looking to blow the whistle, whereas I think referees should be looking not to blow the whistle if possible and to let it flow as much as they can.
Yeah, Snoop Madra says, excellent decision by the referee for pulling David Fitz for his handoff on Saturday. And that's true. I mean, remember, he was soloing through, and I can't remember who exactly was pulling out of him, but he drove his arm across him and hit him on the helmet. And, you know, it was a free out. Deserved it. I mean,
the boys won't be happy, the Clare boys. But if he didn't have the ball in his hand there, that's probably sending off. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, I thought that looked quite bad, I have to say. And David Fitzgerald is treading a thinnish line there. I thought his flick in the Munster final wasn't hectic either. So it's just something. Listen, that was probably symptomatic of the frustration that was going through a lot of the Clare lads' heads at that time. And it was almost like I can't get away from you. I can't get away from you, and I'm going to do whatever I can to open a bit of space. But I think just on that, and I'm sure we'll chat with Colin a bit in a couple of minutes, how happy and satisfying is it from a Clare point of view to have had all that frustration, to have been so annoyed at different times during the game with different things that were going on, your own form, the form of your teammates, mistakes that have been made, and to still come out the other side of that, just hugely, hugely satisfying. I believe Brian Lohan gave them a bit of a rousing speech at half time. I'd say there's nothing surer than that. As Colin Galvin says, he doesn't need to say much. He just gives you that look, and he does. He has that kind of death stare. And even after the match, like Lohan was out on the pitch longer nearly than any player, because it's amazing. He's just absolutely adored as a player, but absolutely adored as a manager. And as I saw Derek Lynch tweeting it, he's the man that has united Clare. Like, there's so much unity there now. There's such a feel-good factor around Clare and around what Brian Lohan has done for them. And it's just so interesting in that semi-final. 20 years ago, Brian Lohan was full-back in an All-Ireland final playing against Kilkenny side managed by Brian Cody. Now he's managing against Brian Cody with an All-Ireland final at place. Just brilliant.
Yeah, it's a matchup that for years there I wanted to see. Around that era when Clare won their All-Ireland in 2013, the next year or two, I really badly wanted to see a Clare versus Kilkenny championship match, but it never transpired. First meeting in the championship since 2006. I mean, what other sport in the world arranges it so that their top teams don't meet for 16 years? Imagine Liverpool and Man United not meeting each other for 16 years. It's absolutely crazy. We need to restructure. But anyway, Cork, we're going to have Colin Ryan on talking about Clare and defending Clare's honour, as everyone in Clare seems to be doing lately. That seems to be the thing. You're not a Clare man or woman if you're not defending the banner lately. But what about Cork and Galway? Cork are out. They did leave it behind them, but you have to give credit to Galway. The amount of criticism they got for their sort of non-performance in the Leinster final, it was important they reacted, and they did.
Yeah, no, massively important that they reacted. You probably briefly mentioned it earlier. The early goal just seemed to kind of spook Cork a little bit or something. It's something that they weren't prepared for. You have to overcome a mistake like that. It was a really weird first half. Like, I think Cork had only scored, I think there was like 4 or 5 scores in the game after a quarter of the game. Just really strange, because we know how free flowing hurling is, and we move. Seeing as we have the Clare man here, I've never forgiven Colin Ryan since Flannan's robbed us in an All-Ireland Colleges semi-final in 05. So he actually hooked me twice the same day, and the ball went out over the sideline, and you put over the 2 sideline cuts. You probably don't remember, but I'll probably take it to my grave with me.
They were my only bit of hard work I ever did.
Colin, we're going to ask you all about Clare, but I suppose since we just started on Cork and Galway, like Galway won 219 to 121. What did you make of that game? And do you see Galway as a realistic All-Ireland contender? They have Limerick next.
Honestly, I actually thought Cork would I thought Cork could beat Galway. I really did. I thought they'd have enough. And when you look back in the game, they definitely had enough chances to win it. I think some of it was actually very un-Corkman, the lack of ruthlessness in their their goal scoring, the chances Darragh Fitzgibbon had, and Robbie O'Flynn had a great game, but he had another shot. They just I honestly don't think Galway have it in them for 70 minutes to go toe to toe with Limerick. Now listen, I could eat my words and they could be unbelievable, but I actually thought that Cork would have been in great shape if they came through that quarter final to maybe have a right cut at Limerick, because obviously people have kind of said that they've lacked bravery and physicality against Limerick the last couple of years. I thought it would have been a right good semi-final, but I just think Limerick are probably going to overpower and overrun this Galway side. I just think maybe they're not as physical and they don't have the legs like they used to have maybe when they did go toe-to-toe with Limerick a couple of years ago. I'm just thinking back to maybe Gerard McInerney and Dahi Burke. They're another couple of years down the line, and these Limerick lads are relentless in their running ability and how they can overpower players and stuff like that. So I thought it would have been a better matchup of a semi-final if Cork had won. But listen, give Galway their dues. They held tough in the end, and their bench probably made the impact that they really needed it to pull them through.
like the free taking, obviously you were a free taker. Like Conor Lehane struggled on it. Tony Kelly struggled on it. Is there something about Thurles? I mean, it didn't seem overly windy. Is it the pressure of the situation, knowing lose and you're out? What do you think it was this weekend with some of these players in the frees?
Yeah, I suppose like I would always go back to like, you know, Tony's a phenomenal hurler, but like I won't say he doesn't like to hit frees, but it wouldn't be his forte. You know, he wouldn't have wanted to hit them up along. You know, I suppose he kind of developed into a really good free taker more than was a real natural free taker. Maybe like a Peter Duggan, who probably would have hit frees, you know, at every age group, at every level, all the way up along, or possibly, you know, I would have hit them at every age group, every level up along. You know, Tony, that wasn't his. He wasn't known as a free taker. He was never really known as a you know, an out and out free taker. Now he has developed into a fantastic free taker. But and it's the same with possibly Lehane, the pressure of maybe Hoggy not starting, you know, a big game. Hoggy's used to that pressure, you know, and stuff like that. And Lehane, like, still had a great year, I thought. I thought he had an excellent, you know, year from play. I thought he probably had his best year in a Cork jersey in a long, long time. But as well as that, in Thurles, I often find that you do get, because obviously both ends are open, you do kind of get a swirling kind of a wind, you know, sometimes that blows kind of cross field, which is unusual for a field that, you know, kind of has two terraces, I suppose, at either end and is protected from either side. But I often found that Thurles was probably more of an awkward free taking. You know, you had to double guess yourself with wind and stuff like that, rather than a Crow Park where, you know, you're protected an awful lot, you know, around you in terms of the wind that funnels in and stuff like that. And sometimes it can just be, you know, the day is bad for you, you know, and things just go wrong. And if you start off and maybe like Tony had a couple of very long range frees to start, you know, and I suppose he missed a couple at the end of the last game and Peter had stepped up. So, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if you saw Peter taking over for the semi-final, you know, and going at it from the start. Just because I don't think it bothers Tony. I don't think Tony needs it for his game, you know, to get into the game or anything like that. And Tony is, you know, is completely selfless. Like, you know, he wouldn't be looking at that and going, I want to score 12 points. You know, he'll be looking at that and going, you know, is Peter a better free taker? You know, is it better for Clare? And it's probably the mark of the man, really, you know, that he'd always put the team first.
When you looked at the Cork inside forwards, like Alan Connolly had a goal chance after 2 minutes. I mean, straight away after Jack Grealish had scored that fortuitous enough one for Galway. And obviously, I think that rocked Cork. But if they had to get the goal straight away, it might have settled them. Connolly, he turned Dahi Burke. Dahi Burke tripped over Connolly's leg. He probably had more time, could have put it back on the Hurley and just, you know, slammed it home. That might have settled them down. But do you feel it was a mistake not to start Horgan? I mean, from open play, to be fair, Tim O'Mahony won some good ball. Alan Connolly won some good ball. I think it just wasn't Lehane's day at all now. It just wasn't his. But, like, would you have started Horgan here, or are we being unfair, or, you know, just kind of easy be wise after the event?
I think it's a real case of being wise after the event. You know, I think if you really look at, and don't get me wrong, like Patrick Horgan is a phenomenal hurler. You know, he's probably been one of the best in my generation up along. But, like, sometimes, you know, maybe an impact from the bench, maybe when the game opens up, you know, I've kind of seen in recent times the intensity of the game at the start, you know, is phenomenal. And, you know, do you need lads who are going to chase back? You know, it's a bit like the Seamus Callan situation with Tipperary. You know, sometimes the legs just aren't there. And, like, in this day and age, you can't have you can't even have one forward who isn't pulling their weight in terms of, you know, their ability to track back, hook, block, close down pressure, because most of the time you're playing 5v6, you know, in a forward line. So I think obviously they've looked at that and they've gone high energy. And kind of maybe hoping that when the game opens up that Hoggy could come in and pick a few scores off and stuff like that. But hindsight will win you a lot of games. You know, like it's very easy for us all to be kind of saying that. I think it was probably a good decision. It's a bit like the Kingston one for the All-Ireland last year. You know, do you hold him in reserve? Do you not? You know, these are decisions managers have to make. You know, they see more than what we see a lot of the time, and I think it can be very harsh on managers when we say it at the end that you know, you should have started him when you lose a game.
Michael, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, no, I tell you what, just looking, there was various times in the last 20 or 25 minutes where the type of game Cork are playing doesn't necessarily suit Horgan at the moment, where it's a ball that's flying out that he's going to have to run probably 20 or 30 yards he's going to probably have to take on his man as well. And there was even times where he actually wasn't making the run and wasn't given that option, because I don't know if he can win a kind of a foot race with a real athletic, agile kind of cornerback anymore. So it's a funny kind of a one. I was looking in at the forward line and just wasn't seeing movement from him at different times as well. So I think Cork is going to be an interesting one. I think Kieran Kingston's future is going to be interesting. It's obviously his second time around. Been to an All-Ireland final, probably disappointed the first year. I think we're beaten in a qualifier by Tip, quarter-final this year, with lots of ups and downs. I think Horgan's future is going to be interesting as well. Whether he's probably not a guaranteed starter anymore, and whether he's going to be happy to continue. If that's the case, that I think that'll be interesting too. And just a point you made, Colin, about Galway as well. I think a worry about Galway going in against Limerick is, how easily Cork were able to open them up at times. They didn't take the chances, but there's nothing sure than if Shane Flanagan's able to open someone up, they'll walk the ball into the goals if they have to, or Galan will do the exact same. So, but listen, from a Galway point of view, nobody's really going to give them any hope going into a semi-final. So maybe they'll just arrive, stick their chests out, try and match them for energy and play with a bit of abandon. And if they could get, if there's an off day from a couple of Limerick's bigger players, maybe they'll have a chance. Maybe this is something similar to when Kilkenny played them in 2019. No one gave Kilkenny any hope going in that day, and we saw that's obviously the last championship defeat that they've had. So I think that's good. It's going to be interesting. But you wouldn't have been blown away by Galway the other day. But maybe there'll be a bit of a release valve from getting a result, getting the monkey of the Leinster final kind of off no show off their back maybe as well.
Colin, were you surprised with how delighted Henry Shefflin looked after the game? And do you think that's because of all the pressure surrounding the Brian Cody and the handshakes and the non-performance in the Leinster final?
Yeah, possibly. I suppose managers have a lot of emotions, and he's probably had a particularly tough year. I'd say, Henry kind of looks like a fella who wears his heart on his sleeve, but is probably proud, is very proud, you can kind of see it in him, and he wants to succeed, I suppose. And he, listen, everybody's kind of disappointed, I think, with how the Cody Shefflin thing has kind of gone, even from a neutral standpoint, I just think it stinks, if two players like that can't, or, if two people like that who've won an awful lot together can't just, have a civil handshake on the sideline, I just thought it was a bit, I was annoyed at it, I was frustrated at it. I was kind of like, that stuff normally doesn't happen with Kilkenny, but especially, with two people who are probably the two biggest hurling characters in the last, 2 decades, to play the game. I just thought it was a bit frustrating to see, and disappointing to see. But it's intriguing because it's Henry's first time coming up against this Limerick team, and I'm kind of intrigued to see, what he has picked up about them, what he's going to drill into Galway for, the next 2 weeks to see. And are they going to come with something different? Are they going to come with some type of a different game plan? Because I think, if this Galway team tries to go toe-to-toe with Limerick, I don't think they have the ability to do it. So, I just wonder, are they going to set up differently? Are they going to do something? And it is a complete shot to nothing, because I think Galway wouldn't be perceived as being a team that will topple this Limerick side, in their current form. So they have a right good chance. And as Michael said, it's a bit like the Kilkenny situation. They could come and bring a level of intensity that maybe Limerick aren't expecting, and try and go that way. But I still think they're not going to do it for 70 minutes. And that's going to be their big problem, I think, because Limerick are just relentless.
Do you think there's probably going to be a physicality deficit? Because some of the Galway players, they look like they're a couple of years shy in the S&C, and some that's because of age, and others, I'm not exactly sure why that is the case. But then I suppose there are players like Cathal Mannion had a very quiet Leinster final. Mikey Butler kept tabs on him, but he scored 4 here. Conor Whelan again scored 1-2. You could argue maybe he's the best inside forward in the country alongside Aaron Galan and, Desi Hutchinson form. Joseph Cooney was very good. Gerard McInerney went off injured as well. But that physicality deficit, and who did impress you on the Galway side?
Well, like they've really kind of brought in, I suppose, a bit of youth. You know, Henry has freshened up the side in a lot of ways. Like, you know, I suppose Fintan Burke has kind of had his first full season, you know, of really going at it, like, you know, kind of becoming a leader and stuff like that. But Ronan Glennon, Tom Monaghan, you know, they're all going to be good hurlers. You know, you can see it. They have ability, they have legs, but like you said, they are probably, you know, a couple of years short of being leaders, you know, replacing the likes of, you know, what Joe did, for instance, you know, that physicality stakes that are there. But like Conor Whelan, the big worry for Galway would be like, you know, that like Mikey Casey, Sean Finn, Barry Nash, you know, they'll all, like, if Whelan is having a bit of success on one of them, then the next one just comes on, you know. So it's like, I think if Whelan is shut down, I think Galway are in big bother, because, you know, he really is their fulcrum, you know, and some of the scores he got yesterday were like just looking at, like, you know, the two of them, one off either side, inside the 14, right side, like, they were just phenomenal, you know. And he has really stepped up his game in terms of being the leader for this Galway team, I suppose, when Joe has gone. But I think their half forward line, when they still have to go, I wouldn't say go back to David Burke, but, you know, David Burke has had a lot of injuries and he's still, you know, ticking the box for what they need and stuff like that. But probably a few years shy of being a real contender again.
Yeah, Michael, I'm looking at some of the stats that I have from the game here. In the first half, Cork, 0 goals from 3 chances. Galway, 2 goals from 1 chance, because I wouldn't count the Jack Grealish one as a real chance. Second half, of course, Shane Kingston got his, and there was no other massive goal chance that I had. When Patrick Horgan scored his goal, he did have Niall O'Leary running on the inside free over the top, and I think he could have possibly played him in at that stage. But Cork had 49 scoring chances and scored 121. Galway had 34 chances and scored 21. So, I mean, they probably only had 2/3 of the chances and somehow got out of dodge. I still can't understand how Cork left this behind them.
It depends what narrative you want to put on it. You can say they're economical, or you can, you know, that's one way of looking at it. Or just, yeah, Cork missed an awful lot. And just so to piggyback on something Colin is saying there, there's nothing sure that Limerick will press the puck out and make them go along and make their half forwards win ball. There's nothing sure, and I'm just not sure where in the half forward line they're going to win ball. I just can't really see it. You go back to the Kilkenny game in 19, they had an outball, and TJ would say that they could horse it balls down on top of. I don't know. I don't think Galway have that type of outball there, so they're going to have to find some other way. What that is, I'm not sure, but they're going to have to find some other way. And just to go back to the Cork point, I thought Kieran Kingston said after that he was okay with them going for goals. Like, I thought Robbie O'Flynn forced his goal chance. I thought he was about 25 yards out. I just don't think you're going to beat an inter-county keeper from there, particularly unless it bounces in front of him. If it bounces in front of him, you have a chance. And
you had Shane Kingston over his left shoulder if he just popped it.
Yeah, and what you say about the Horgan chance as well. Niall O'Leary was actually at the start of that move and it followed the whole way up. And it was a difficult one from Horgan because you could see he wanted to get on the scoreboard. Like, you could see it from where you were as well. He was just mad to get his confidence up and get on the scoreboard and that. So it's a difficult kind of one in that situation. But just not sure where Cork go from here. Do they, you know, does Kieran Kingston go again into his fourth year? Does he mix up the backroom team a bit? Or do they kind of draw a line and move on? I think that's going to be kind of fascinating enough.
Yeah. What do you think, Colin? I mean, I'm a bit frustrated with when I watch Cork because I think the talent is there, but I wondered at the start of the year, maybe there was an injury I didn't know about, but Luke Meade seems to be sitting on the bench and I couldn't understand. And then ultimately he comes in for the Waterford game and he's been very important. Rob Downey was out, then he was in. I don't think wing back really suited him. I think Damien Casey, even though he scored a nice point and won some ball in front, he tended to be, instead of collecting the ball in front, he was nearly scooping it out because seemed to me a little bit unsure of his touch. I thought Conor Cahalane looked very good last year. He's fallen down the pecking order. Alan Cadigan comes off the bench and scores 3 points. And I've seen his name sitting on the bench a few times and I'm wondering, why is he not being used here? If he's playing this well, why isn't he getting a chance? I know he's had a lot of injuries. So I come away, and like the Kieran Joyce being at centre back, that's asking an awful lot of a 20-year-old. And I know he's a great hurler, but I think the same as Coleman, the back door was very wide open, and some of the high balls coming in on top of a 20-year-old, and he's touching it down, and it could go anywhere. I do think he will be a brilliant player for them, but I just wondered, did they know their best team all year? is that excusable at this stage of the game? And will Kieran stay on?
It's the one flaw that I would kind of have highlighted maybe with Kingston this year is I really don't think he knew what his best 15 was, and I really don't think they got a balance in terms of how they wanted to play. They kind of fell into this team. They fell into like Tim O'Mahony going back to corner forward. Like it was kind of nearly a needs must rather than a choice, I think, that he had. Like, he kind of gave into maybe media pressure in terms of Mark Coleman going to wing back. It was nearly a stubbornness like that. There was probably too many opinions on the team. There was, they weren't going well, but then when you're not going well, you kind of have to do something. You can't. But the one thing I would ask is, do they really have a strategic plan of how they wanted to play? I think the way you're looking at setting up your team now, you have to look and go, is this going to be good enough to beat Limerick? And I think you have to set up from the very start of the year and kind of go, is the style of play that we're going to, play with going to stand up to Limerick? Because, like, if it doesn't stand up to Limerick, you're not winning All Ireland, in my books, because you're going to have to beat them somewhere. And they've shown a number of times that, their style of play is not suited to playing against Limerick because they give them too much space and they stand off them and they let them have the ball and stuff like that. I just don't think they have that raw intensity. They have loads of lovely hurlers. Don't get me wrong, like they have loads of fantastic hurlers, but they don't have that level of tackling in their forward line that would really put pressure on backlines. Like Harnedy, Lahan, Robbie O'Flynn, they are fantastic hurlers. Hoggy, Alan Connolly, but like, did you ever see any of them do, a swarm tackle on a Galway backline coming out? It just wasn't there, and it wasn't there all year. It's like as if they kind of all funnel backwards the minute, Galway have the ball, and they're all kind of in no man's land. They're kind of getting the ball passed between the lines rather than actually putting pressure on teams. Whereas if you look at what has been successful this year, it's that pressure, it's that turnover, it's making sure that, backlines, when they get to a certain point, aren't able to, kind of find an easy ball to a full forward line, as much as that, because they don't have that work rate. It's obviously not something they're working on in training, and how they're turning over ball and stuff like that. They seem to want to play an awful lot of hurling, but the game has changed now, and you need to be able to kind of, I suppose, engage backlines when needs must, and when you want to put a bit of pressure on teams and, really, I suppose, make sure that the ball coming in isn't great. Because if you give backlines 2 seconds to pick out a forward line now, you're already behind the mark, because the forwards are just so good now. They're so fit and so physical and creating space that Cork just haven't got that match right, and I don't know, do they need somebody to come in and shake things up and really have a go at them? Because Kingston's probably a bit nice, in terms of what hurling he wants to play, and I don't think that's going to get them over the line.
Yeah, so we'll talk about Clare Wexford now. Clare 124, Wexford 314. Michael, you were there, as was I. Give us your version of the game and then throw it over to Colin. Oh, sorry, I have you muted there, Michael. Start again. Sorry, I had.
Yeah, no, I'd say for the past 2 weeks, it was a difficult spot probably for Clare to be in. Everybody lauding them over their Munster final performance and getting built up for what was needed to take on Limerick, probably twice in the space of 2 or 3 weeks. And then there was a big come down from it. There was no silverware. They probably not drowned their sorrows, but they probably went and enjoyed each other's company for a night or two. Got back training, then everybody telling them how great they were. Everybody telling them that, it'd be great to get another crack at Limerick in an All-Ireland final. And there was a potential for what happened Waterford probably earlier on this year to happen Clare. And if it was going to happen, it was probably going to happen in the quarter-final. And in fairness to Wexford, I would say tactically, I think Wexford got it pretty spot on in that, like Dermot O'Keefe's role as a sweeper is just so smart. When Clare lads looked up, they'd know where to hit the ball.
And the matchups, Michael, as well.
Yeah, the matchups are really, really good, really on the money. And they had Clare spooked a bit in the first probably 15, 20 minutes. And I'd say Rory O'Connor going off would definitely help to turn the tide a small bit. But then when they got the 2 goals in the second half, you're thinking there's so many things going wrong for Clare here. But there's always a thing where you just need to get more and just need to keep the boot to the floor. They probably dropped a man back. I think like Conor McDonald was was causing a good bit of trouble there midway through the second half. Clare got an awful lot deeper. Conlon sat a good bit deeper. The midfield dropped in a good bit as well. They were able to get themselves into the game, similar to what they did probably against Galway in the 2 All-Ireland semi-finals in 2018. They just dropped a load of players behind the ball, got themselves back into it, and they just were able to turn the screw when it really mattered. Combined with the fact that Shane Reck was gone off, Damien Reck was gone off. Damien Reck had done fairly well on Shane O'Donnell. Shane Reck had done pretty well on Tony Kelly. But it's such, like, to me, this is it was the perfect result and the perfect performance from Clare. They played badly, needed lads to find a way somehow when things were going badly, and they did find a way. Like, look at, like, Tony Kelly's going into the All-Ireland semi-final with a point to prove. Peter Duggan's going in with a point to prove. Paul Flanagan, John Connon, all these lads are going in with points to prove into an All-Ireland semi-final. So I think the boot is back on the foot that they'd wanted to be on going into the semi-final. I'll put it that way.
Well, what I'm taking from that, Colin, is he's saying that Clare's defeat to Limerick in the Munster final went to Clare's heads.
I'm just laughing at the fact that he said Tony has a point to prove going into the semi-final. He scored 4 points.
in his own head, he definitely does. He would have been. I genuinely think, and you know him, I'd say he would have been disgusted how he played on Saturday. Yeah,
so good. I'm laughing like it's the standards that he has. Yeah. Like, it's absolutely phenomenal. Like, you know, I think. But like, listen, I fully agree with an awful lot of what Michael has to say. Like, that, I was really worried about this game. Just because of the situation we found ourselves in. I think we surpassed everybody's expectations this year in terms of, you know, how we've sustained maybe our level of competition and intensity, you know, right throughout a really hard Munster campaign. You know, I thought we might have fallen flat in the Munster final day, you know, in terms of like how we brought that intensity. And, you know, I was really, really happy that we didn't, you know, because I think it would have been far worse if we'd come out of that Limerick game, you know, getting wiped out. You know, so like, I think they'd have taken an awful lot of confidence for it, but it was the first time probably all year that Clare were going in as favourites, you know, as heavy favourites to win an All-Ireland quarter-final. And sometimes they're just a complete banana skin. You know, I remember like we had a great run through when we had the great run through in 2013, and the All-Ireland quarter-final was the one. It was the one where you were coming up against a big team, you know, that had a game behind them, won. You know, as well, they were coming in with a bit of confidence. And listen, if Wexford had anything in them over the last couple of years, they were going to come at Clare. You know, what Clare have done to them, and, you know, in recent years. But I thought it was a really good game for Clare, because they had to, you know, kind of really put their heads together and come up with how they were going to get through this Wexford backline. You know, Wexford play it's a frustrating brand of hurling. It's not a bad brand of hurling. I don't necessarily not like it. They do what they have to do to win a game, you know. But like, what Clare were doing in the first half was like they were coming as far as probably 45, and they were launching attacks from there, you know. And against the Wexford backline that's loaded like that, you know, you're going to get no joy. You know, they had everybody bottled up and stuff like that. And I thought Clare were kind of quite good for an awful lot of the second half. I suppose, like, you know, I don't know how the second goal wasn't a square ball, you know, is beyond me. But listen, that's neither here or there. You have to get on with things and move on. It wasn't given. But where Clare got their real joy from, and what they've been doing all year so well, was that they were drawing David Fitz, Ryan Taylor, Shane O'Donnell back and starting their attacks from deep with the running game, you know. And I think, you know, Tony coming back, you know, deep as well. Like, them 4 lads. Diarmuid Ryan had a great game, I thought. You know, David McInerney has been an unsung hero all year, you know, in terms of what he has done in terms of physicality and stuff like that. Sometimes the quiet things are the good things. But they started their attacks from deep. You know, David Fitz started running. Ryan Taylor was coming back nearly into his 21, gathering ball, you know, starting attacks, playing the running game. And suddenly then the space was being created because we were overlapping. And like, the leadership of Shane O'Donnell and Tony and the subs. Like, I had written off Aaron Shanahan, I won't lie, you know, I'd written him off this year. I thought he wasn't going to see any action for the remaining part of the year. And aside from the goal, you know, I suppose he got lucky on the goal, but he got 2 great scores, you know, over the shoulder, which is very Aaron Shanahan-like, that we haven't seen in a long time. You know, it's his atypical scores. But Shane Meehan coming on brought a burst of energy. You know, he got 2 points from play. Mark Rogers, seeing Mark Rogers coming on as well, you know, the next 2 weeks are going to be important for him as well. So, like, I just be coming out of it with a load of positives, knowing that, you know, what actually works for them and what doesn't work for them. It's not going well, what they need to do, you know, to negate maybe a backline that's defensive like that. But it's a real intriguing battle because Kilkenny are going to bring an intensity that probably only Clare and Limerick have shown this year. So it's going to be an absolute war zone, I'd say. You know, it's going to be like a Munster final first 3 minutes. I can't imagine there's going to be any joy from anywhere. Yeah, and if the referee leaves the whistle at home, I think we'll all be in for a cracker.
But you have to be somewhat concerned about Clare's form here, because Wexford were in a great spot here. Obviously, they got the couple of goals there, and Ian Galvin hit the crossbar, so that could easily have been a goal at the other end. But they ran out of bodies, like Darragh Egan said. You know, Rory O'Connor had to go after in the first half with what Egan said might be a significant enough leg injury. We hope it's nothing like a cruciate or anything like that. But he's a massive loss. I actually didn't understand why they didn't try him as an inside forward, because he'd scored 1-4 against Clare in the league in there. Looked really good. But the last 10 minutes, they had to take off Shane Reck, Damien Reck, Liam McGovern, who hadn't played against Kerry. I presume he was carrying some sort of an injury. Diarmuid O'Keefe had to... Sorry, I said Diarmuid O'Keefe, Liam McGovern. So they ran out of bodies. Paul Morris had to end up coming in the backs. And let's call a spade a spade. It should have been a black card and a penalty for Lee Chin as well. You massively got away with one there.
Well, I'll give you the irony of it all is, I'll tell you what, that would have been given if the one wasn't given against Clare against Tip last year. So
you see now, I think that shows how guilty you are about it, the fact that you have to reference something from a year ago.
I'm not guilty about it. I'm saying it would have been given if the one a year ago wasn't given. I'm being serious, because what happened a year ago was an absolute joke show, and it's the typical GA rules, right? So they do something stupid, they make a mockery of it, and then suddenly the rule is ignored. And that's what happened this year. So, like, you know, they live by the sword. And I said this, it's the GA can be so amateurish at times in terms of its rules and how it deals with things and how it deals with suspensions. You know, like, I'm sorry now, like, but Clare and Galway getting off suspensions because the meeting was held online, and an online meeting is not considered a meeting in terms of, like, they are just, like, if it was a business, they'd be gone bust. You know, like, they're just, it's phenomenally amateurish. And to think that we could even go to professionalism with some of the organizations and some of the things that people are run by, like, it annoys the life out of me, you know. And to think that these lads have power to just do things on the will is just crazy, you know. And they've obviously said that rule is gone now unofficially, but, like, they love rules and they hate rules, and, you know, they'll change them on a whim, you know, depending on what's actually happening. So I don't actually feel any bit sorry for anybody at this point in time, because we've had our fair share of them. So
yeah, but you can't be giving out now, because you were giving out about, you know, and, like, I have a bit of fun with Derek Conan about this, about some of the cleaving that Limerick were doing earlier in the year. Then the Munster final, you go cleaving. You give out, I've never heard such giving out as last year against Tipperary. And look at you now, and you're grand about.
I didn't give out about any Limerick cleaving. I think they're on the line. I think they're lucky they get away with it. You know, it's what makes All Ireland champions. You know, support is different. The Limerick fans are the very same. So, like, you know, you're just worried now because, you know, the Tip fans aren't calling anything out. So it's
there's no need for it, Colin. No need for it.
Colin Ryan went full Father Finton Stack there a second ago and just basically said, I've had my fun and that's all that matters.
Do you think that both of those Wexford goals were square balls?
I think the second one, I give the benefit of doubt in the first one. I thought he probably timed it just right, you know, and, like, I suppose Ever would have been really unhappy maybe with kind of letting that one past him. He probably didn't get his body in line with the goal. But second one, definitely, I thought he was probably, you know, a yard, if not 2 yards inside the square, you know, when he was contesting that, which, you know, definitely means. But listen, I actually think it probably ignited Clare in a way, you know, because they kind of had nothing to lose after that, you know, and they really kind of warmed to the occasion. So, like, listen, they're great. If we'd have lost, of course, we'd have probably been given out about it. But there was obviously a little discussion because he went to the umpire after that goal was scored, and it was I actually thought he was going to give the square ball, you know, after going in, but Listen, he obviously didn't and stuff like that. But yeah, like, listen, if that rule is consistently applied, it's a black card all day long. But I can guarantee you, if you look at, and I've seen situations this year where I've kind of thought that's a black card definitely in games, and it wasn't applied. So, like, my big gripe with the GA is, if you're not going to do something consistently, don't do it at all, because that's when the real unfairness comes in.
Yeah.
No, I think it's hilarious, Shane. You were at the McDonagh final as well. When was the last black card you'd seen before the McDonagh final? Last black card, the penalty. It's literally like they've had a conversation that hasn't been made public, and they've said, unless, this is the most blatantly obvious thing and we're going to get absolutely annihilated, we're basically not putting ourselves in a position or leaving ourselves open to this sort of criticism again. It literally looks like that's what's after happening. I was actually going to say to you, Shane, about maybe 6 weeks ago, I'm going to say, have they gotten rid of the black card thing, or was that only for the league, or was that some memo that I didn't get? But there's clearly a diktat coming where they're saying, we're not doing this by hook or crook, and they haven't done it to this point. So unless there's the most blatant incident in the semi-final or final, there's not a hope of you seeing a black card or a penalty. Not a hope.
Colin, do you think that the way the way Clare won this game could be the making of them? Like, and you probably, the Wexford game in 2013 could be the same thing. Like, you waded through mud, won that after extra time, and you kind of took off from there. You were very good against Galway, beat Limerick quite well, and obviously went on to win the finals. Listen,
like, I would honestly say on form, Clare, Kilkenny, and Limerick are probably the three teams that you'd be looking at. It would be very surprising if Galway, got to. So, like, at this point in time, Clare have, and I was only briefly talking to John Conlon, about it, but, like, what's coming out of the camp is just a positivity that I haven't seen in the Clare camp in so long. They look so united. They look like they're just willing to fight for one another. There's nothing coming out of the camp. Like, you wouldn't hear anything about what's happening in training, which is brilliant. That's a real sign of, things are going well and everybody's rowing in the same boat and stuff like that. And, that's not always the case in Clare hurling. So, like, when we do get a group like that and are going really well, I suppose it's a bit like maybe the All-Ireland semi-final in 2018, wasn't it, with Galway? I think you just need to make hay when you get years like this, when things are going really well for you, so like if we can get over Kilkenny, I think they will have a phenomenal amount of confidence. But I'm taking nothing for granted against the Kilkenny side, because they've shown down through the years that they are hard bet. No matter how you go at them, they always have something in their armory. So, like, I'm just looking forward to the game more than anything else. I'm hoping both teams perform, and if Clare were to come out of it with a win after that, they'd be in with a fair rattle for an All-Ireland final, which would be phenomenal this year. It's something that we probably wouldn't have dreamed of at the start of the year.
Yeah, I know you have to go there, Colin, but Catnap says Clare came from nowhere this season, and to nowhere they will return, with a few laughy faces there. Final question for you then. Rory Hayes been taken off after 8 minutes. Ruthless enough stuff. And then there seems to be a lot of talk that Davy Fitz won't really mention Brian Lohan's name when he's sort of praising the team. Does anyone in Clare even care about that?
Listen, I won't lie. I've probably lost interest in the Sunday game to an awful lot of degree. I think it's turned into a bit of a. It was the Tailteann Cup coverage yesterday was very refreshing. And I think the Sunday game has missed a beat in terms of having, kind of fresh players, maybe even current players, maybe even, like, I just think it has turned into, it's a bit like the Dunphy, Giles and Brady, Irish coverage of matches, down through the years there. It got to a stage where, they were just kind of, it was nearly a pantomime, in terms of what they were talking about. And it doesn't offer, I won't say real analysis, but all they seem to be talking about is talking points, at the end of a Sunday evening. The show is way too short for the level of games that are being played now. A highlight show during the week, I can guarantee you the amount of people, if you actually did proper analysis and watch games back and did a hurling show and a football show during the week, I can guarantee you viewing figures would be through the roof.
They don't have the rights to do that, to be fair.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's something that I'm not saying that what they're doing, what they have, but I've lost interest. be honest, I watch the highlights of games that I haven't seen, and after that, it's fast forward, on to the next game. I just think I won't say it doesn't serve its purpose, but it's probably trying to stay relevant and stuff like that. But listen, the Davy and Brian thing, obviously, that's a scenario that, only the two of them, can deal with and stuff like that. It doesn't bother anybody in Clare.
But you mentioned the Henry Shefflin versus Brian Cody thing, that annoyed you a little bit. Would this not annoy you at all?
But Brian and Davy shook hands, and they played against Wexford. It wasn't as public as, like the spat between them on the field after the game was petulant, I thought. And don't get me wrong, listen, Davy has his moments too, and Brian has surely as well. But it doesn't bother me that he's not mentioning him, and I think it looks probably poor on Davy, that he's not mentioning him, because, Brian has obviously got this group united and stuff like that. But I just think the manner of the publicly, Cody and Shefflin thing, and the standoff, and, the kind of in front of all the cameras, the looks they gave, and even the little words that Cody gave, when he did come over to Shefflin and discussed it, in which Shefflin went away from the second handshake. It just all looked a bit, kind of, you're playing it out in front of a full crowd, and it's not very nice, I think, for everybody to see. But listen, the Sunday game, like, Davy's opinions are Davy's opinions, and he can say what he likes on the Sunday game and stuff like that. I see Joe had a bit of a jibe with him yesterday on the analysis, in terms of him going down to interview Brian Lohan. But, I think Davy's aware of it. I think he's aware that he's probably not saying it, and, it's up to the other analysis, I suppose, to call it out.
And I suppose the final thing before we let you go then, Clare for the All-Ireland, yeah?
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. That's Shane, yeah. Talk us up. It's Limerick's All-Ireland to win still, and it will take a serious team to beat them. And I do think whoever comes through the Kilkenny or Clare match, I'll be honest, I'm probably writing off Galway a bit here. I think whoever comes through the Kilkenny Clare match will give Limerick it should be a good All-Ireland final. If they do come through it, because whoever comes out of that game will be coming with serious confidence, and probably a lot of momentum, and probably the intensity and physical game to match Limerick, which is, I think, could make a really good All-Ireland final, so I'm just looking forward to the semi-final first, and we'll take it game by game, as the cliche goes, Shane.
Okay, well, great stuff, Colin. Appreciate you coming on. Always good fun chatting to you.
Cheers, Scott.
Thanks a million.
Good man.
Okay, that's Colin Ryan there. Top scorer in the 2013 All-Ireland title run for Clare. Not too happy with the Sunday game. I think unbelievably tight turnaround in terms of getting all the games together and doing the analysis on it. I actually liked when they transitioned from all the lads were sitting at the studio, the circular sort of where the tables and seats are in that little section, and then they transitioned over to the screen with the tactical analysis. I thought that was a smooth enough transition over and back. Thought that worked quite well. Is there anything else? What haven't we said about this game between Wexford and Clare? Well, one thing is, I wanted to mention Colm Lyons. When Wexford were trying to slow the game up in the second half, we were looking at this from the sideline. Jack O'Connor took his helmet off and started pointing at his eye, presumably need to change the contact lenses. Colm Lyons was like, not at all, play the game on. And I think another player went down trying to get the game stopped as well. And Lyons said, on you go. And I think he was 100% right. Now, I think teams are right to try and stop the game and slow it down. We've all been involved in teams before where you do that. But I think they're dead right. And I think if it happens with a goalie in the future as well, we've mentioned Nicky Quaid doing it, I think the referee should say, someone else take the puck out, Quaid, get off the field there. Just get off the field, someone else stand in the goal.
Yeah, I think the referees are starting to get a bit wiser to lads trying to buy frees, lads trying to waste time, any little mechanisms there. Listen, if you were on the field, you'd do the exact same thing as a player. You'd do whatever it is to try and stop momentum. But I do think referees are getting an awful lot wiser to what's going on. Something I would have liked to just ask Colin, like, I know Kilkenny wanted Clare in 14. Did Clare want Kilkenny in 14? Did Clare, was any part of that 2013 All-Ireland tainted somewhat that they didn't beat, Tip or Kilkenny, particularly beat Kilkenny along the way? But I just think it's going to be a fascinating matchup. Like, I don't think there's that's a one-score game, that All-Ireland semi-final. It's a one-score game either way, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see. But just even like Shane Meehan has kind of came of age probably the other day. Aaron Shannon, it's just like Clare have that bench now that they didn't have before. We've hardly seen Aaron Shannon in this year's championship, but they have those guys that are waiting in the wings. I'd imagine that 20 minutes that Mark Rogers is on the field will do him a hell of a lot of good as well. And there's another 2 weeks for the possibility of Aidan McCarthy to potentially feature in the match day 26 as well. So
he's a class player.
He's a brilliant
a Croke Park player.
Yeah, without doubt, yeah. So listen, he could be featuring yet. From a Wexford point of view, the worries of only scoring 3-14, been in a winning position with 15 minutes to go. Like I said it to you, I think I said it to you in the press box. Like Wexford, or what do Clare need to win this game? They need to get someone sent off, and Wexford need to be 15-14, which they haven't dealt with well at all in previous situations. But that didn't happen the other day. Wexford tired again, and I know it's nothing to say anything about their strength and conditioning or what the conditioning that they've done, but they've tired a couple of times in games. And they've lost lads when they really needed them in that last 5 or 10 minutes. And it's cost them. It cost them in the 2019 All-Ireland semi-final, fun enough, when Darragh Egan was the benefactor on the Tipperary side, and it cost them again the other day.
Is it white line fever? Is it between the ears?
It didn't look like that to me. Being honest with you, it didn't look like that they were fearing the finish line. Dermot O'Keefe coming off is an interesting one. I didn't think it was I thought he looked a bit spent, and they were bringing in a direct replacement for him, a sweeper in Kevin Foley. Kevin Foley just hasn't been on it this year for whatever reason. Not sure why. I actually don't recall him even been on the ball when he came on. I can't.
Got a yellow card though.
Yeah, I can't clearly remember that. So I don't know. Like if they'd been able to keep the O'Keefe maybe on, it would have been more solid at the back. But we haven't talked about as well. We talked about like goalkeeping mistakes. It was a mistake that led to Aaron Chandler's goal. I think the tide had nearly turned at that stage before the goal, but that really put the dagger into the side, and Wexford were never winning thereafter. I honestly even think if Clare had went down a man and Chin had scored a penalty, I still think Clare would have won. But yeah, listen, just they took advantage of those mistakes, but they'd well turned. I think they won the last, from Mikey Dwyer's point, or was it no? From the goal, I think, from Chin's last goal, I think Clare outscored them 110 to 3 points to the finish. You just won't win games like that holding on.
Yeah, it was 110 to 4 from that point on. Like Dermot O'Keefe had failed to control a simple ball that had come down the line, and it allowed Shanahan to knock the ball over the bar. And I think that's kind of when they said, okay, maybe he just doesn't have quite enough left in the tank for the rest of the game. Like he had been playing well. That's normally a ball that he collects no bother at all. Like Paul Morris had to come on, and he was on in the defence, so they were clearly digging down deep into the panel. I wonder would Aaron Shanahan start the All-Ireland semi-final? There is the whole notion that, wow, he could make the same impact coming in off the bench. But I think from play, Peter Duggan is struggling just at the moment. And I think Aaron Shanahan was a starter last year, and he gave teams trouble. Like, fair enough, his shooting isn't always as accurate as it was the other day. But would Hugh Lawler enjoy the physical matchup with him? Hugh Lawler enjoys a physical matchup, but Aaron Shanahan is a wrecking ball.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Ryan Taylor or Ian Galvin or someone like that is in around Hugh Lawler the next
Shane O'Donnell?
Yeah, see, I don't know if I think Duggan's probably a really good matchup for Hugh Lawler. I think Shanahan potentially could be a good matchup for him as well. I'd be holding Shanahan in reserve again, to be honest with you, because I just don't think he's played enough this year to play 60 minutes and make a big impact. But I'd say, and I'm always wary of the lad that comes in that makes the impact and starting on the next day and then potentially getting very little out of him. So I'd probably be bringing him in again. But like you could potentially see Shane Meehan even in on Hugh Lawler. I think they've actually got 3 or 4 players that would not suit him. I'll put it to you that way. Players that are going to be really pacey and it will take him on. I think putting the 6'3" or 4" guy in on him, I think that would be, as Cyril used to say, I think that'd be nuts to a monkey.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with putting Peter. I'd nearly start Peter Duggan on, assuming you're going to start the same team, put Peter Duggan on the wing and Shane O'Donnell inside and say, how do you like that?
How'd you like them apples?
Yeah.
Duggan kind of played on the wing the other day. He wasn't inside that much early on. Like Tony Kelly started full forward, Shane Rex started full back, basically. But yeah, I think that would be a smarter way to go about it. And I know you called it about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but Duggan is breaking balls and that, but he's not winning them a lot of the time unless he catches that ball. Those balls are breaking, but I don't see Clare lads coming up with the ball a lot of the time, and I don't see him coming up with the ball forward either, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think they need to get a little bit more out of him. But look, maybe the lead-in and the suspension saga took something out of him. Maybe it took something out of Rory Hayes also. I mean, he did start the game in a fairly unconvincing manner. But I just thought, I couldn't understand that David McInerney wasn't picking up Lee Chin from the very start of the game. Like, I think, fair enough, you might say that Rory Hayes isn't maybe the guy you want contesting high puck-outs against the likes of Jack O'Connor and so on. I get that, but Lee Chin is the one guy. You don't want Lee Chin beating your team. But yeah. I suppose Brian Lohan just had it. I'm starting that man on him, and whoever goes in there is going to pick him up. But taking the guy off after 8 minutes, and look, we're going to have to assume it's just a tactical decision. I see some people mention a shoulder injury after the Munster final. But if Brian Lohan didn't mention anything about an injury, we just have to take it that he said, you know what, I'm taking this guy off here. He's not going well. He got dispossessed by Lee Chin, and Conor McDonald nearly scored a second goal. Lee Chin won another ball, and he just said, you know what, I'm going to cut my losses here straight away. Very rare an all-star nominee is just taken off. And to be fair, you'd have to say there's been a nice few scores taken off Rory Hayes the last couple of days. So maybe just Brian Lohan said, you know what, I just need to take him out of firing line.
Well, I tell you what, if he did have an injury, Brian Lohan wasn't going to tell us anyway. I can tell you that. Whatever information you get, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that. It's tough from our point of view, but he's definitely not going to give you any free information. It was funny, we were doing the interviews yesterday, and there was a couple of Clare lads and officials kind of walking past and just like, tell him nothing, Lohan. And it's like, you don't need to say that. Like, that's already going to be the case. Don't worry. But yeah, really interesting to see what he does for the semi-final, whether he starts Keane Nolan or not.
Nolan's a very physical player. Like, I mean, obviously there was the rugby tackle as well, but you can see he's aggressive, even when he was playing against Watford in that Munster group game.
Yeah, no, without doubt, similar kind of a build to Hayes, really. Like, they look quite alike, even with the same kind of helmet and everything. So he's got a couple of positional headaches, I would say. But yeah, I just don't know if Lohan would have been mad about like Rory Hayes kind of playing around with the ball around the 13-yard line, and even that, when he banged the ball off the ground in the Munster final in a peculiar area of the field in around the 45. I don't think he's down with that, shall we say?
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about this game? You were kind of mentioned in the notion that our Clare, a Croke Park team, Tony Kelly, it's his 5th time ever playing here. Maybe there's a league game in there that we're not quite considering. But there was the All-Ireland semi-final in 2013 against Limerick. There was the All-Ireland final, the replayed All-Ireland final, and the 2018 All-Ireland drawn semi-final. The replay was on in Thurles. And that's the only time. That kind of just tells you how far off the mark Clare were for an awful lot of years during his career. And I suppose Colin, who we had on earlier as well, he would have shared that frustration too. But yeah, are they a Croke Park team was the question you had.
Yeah, well, I could tell you what, I quickly fly down through the team. Ever Quilligan never played in Croke Park. Paul Flanagan was on those matchday squads in 13. Never, I don't think he's played. Conor Cleary played in 18. Rory Hayes, Keane Nolan, neither have played. Dermot Ryan, don't think he played in 18, did he? John Connon obviously played in 13 and 18, as did David McInerney. David Fitzgerald might have featured a small in 18. No. Ryan Taylor, no. Shane O'Donnell obviously played in 13 and 18. Peter Duggan has only played in that one game in 18. Ian Galvin, no. David Reedy was probably playing that game in 18. But there's a lot of guys there that have very little experience in Croke Park, but they look like a team tailor-made for Croke Park. Have that blend of physicality and athleticism and speed. They look absolutely tailor-made for Croke Park, and I think they love the space within Croke Park. So, Cotton Malone, I don't think he did play. He did play in 18. So, like, there's very little experience there. Like Tony Kelly, like one of the best hurlers of all time. Like, I think it's okay to say that. This will probably only be his 5th championship game for Clare in Croke Park, which is a mad thing to think. And you'd have to imagine that they're a team that will thrive up there.
Yeah, David Fitzgerald did actually come on in that 1:30 apiece game against Galway, so I got that wrong. Derek Lynch of Clare FM says played the minor hurling final and semi-final there. Grode Ogo Gracon says Paul Flanagan played with Ballier in Croke Park in 2017. I remember that day.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I was only talking about Clare there, just because obviously Tony and Flanagan would have played there. I think something interesting that Colin was talking about there, the free taking will tip the balance. They can, like, Clare missed 8 frees the other day. I think Kelly missed 4. Duggan missed 3, and David McInerney actually hit a free wide at one stage as well. Like those percent, like you will not beat Kilkenny. You will not beat anybody in a big, huge knockout game, particularly semi-final or final, with that sort of accuracy from frees, or lack of, or inaccuracy, shall we say?
Yeah, you know, Kilkenny have obviously had a bit more time to get themselves right, whereas Clare might have more injury issues coming into this game just by dint of having to play a really physical game at Wexford. So we'll see how that pans out. But like, we're expecting TJ Reid to do what he did in the Leinster final against Galway when he just knocked over free after free, and you know, Galway were silly enough to give away the frees, or the referee, you know, was sold a pup too often in terms of like tiny bit of contact, arms up in the air, free. But earlier on in the season, do you remember in Galway, and maybe it was very windy and swirly and all that kind of stuff, TJ Reid missed a couple of frees that day as well. Like, frees are going to be huge in this game, and I'd say Peter Duggan, he has a lot of quality, and if he could really get that 2018 form, what a weapon he'd be in this game. But geez, he'll have to start just for the frees, and TJ Reid obviously he'd be on the frees as well. But I couldn't agree with you more. I think they're going to determine an awful lot of how this game goes. Do you see it being a massively physical game? I think Clare, it's funny, like, actually that was the thing I wanted to say about Davy Fitz and the Brian Lohan thing. They couldn't, their Clare teams couldn't be more different. Brian Lohan's team is really hard-nosed, physical sort of team, whereas Davies was more of a fast as lightning, sharp hurling team. They couldn't be more different types of teams, could they? And I know obviously 9 years has passed, but they just couldn't be any more different.
I think Davies' team in 2013 were trying to avoid contact. I think Brian Lohan's team is encouraging contact, both with and without the ball, if I'm honest with you. I think Colin said as well that Davy and Brian Lohan shook hands. I think he said that.
I'm pretty sure they did in one of the Clare Wexford games. I think they did, didn't they? Really?
Just I don't remember that. I actually Googled it just to see, and I couldn't see a picture of them. Listen, maybe they did. I do think it's a bit mad that, like, Davies not referring to Brian Lohan by name or whatever on the national broadcaster. I think that's not been smart. If I was producing that show, I'd be saying, like, listen, you have to, like, if you were the manager, everyone would be referring to you. You have to refer to who the manager is.
But doesn't this kind of show that people aren't told exactly what to say when they go on the show? Like, I've worked a little bit with the Sunday game this year, the evening show, and you know, to my knowledge, that's not the way it happens. Other people's experience could be different, and I've been working on my own stuff, not necessarily doing those editorial meetings. But if what you're saying is true there, like, I mean, you know, he would be mentioning his name, but I don't think they're told what to say like that.
Yeah, and I just think that in that case, then I think it's unprofessional not to mention who the manager of a team who's in an All-Ireland semi-final. I think it's unprofessional not to mention who the manager is, because the team play in the manager's style. So the manager deserves credit. Davy's gotten a lot of credit from a lot of people down through the years for the way his teams have played. Imagine if someone in studio was talking about how Wexford played when they won 2019 and they weren't mentioning who the manager was.
Yeah, so this is Andrew Sullivan 180. The first time they did thereafter. I think he's referring to handshakes there.
I don't remember that. That's funny. I don't remember that. I don't recall that now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, let's have a little listen to what Kieran Kingston had to say after the game the other day. Obviously, hugely disappointed, but here he was speaking to the media.
With the early goal, put you on the back foot. What was your whole analysis of what happened after that?
Yeah, I mean, look, just as I said there, you probably heard, I think, a few things. I think, we certainly didn't help ourselves in the first half. We had 24 shots. 7 scores, so that's efficiency is really poor, and in that there were some missed opportunities, some missed goals, some scoring opportunities, point scoring opportunities, which we've been taking in the last few games. We've been taking those easily enough, and for today for some reason we weren't. Credit to the lads, they were creating them, but we just weren't converting. and then on the other side got hit for a sucker punch in the first few seconds, and then another one later. But still, look, we were really in the game at half time, albeit we were going playing into the breeze, and we were only 5 points down, so we never thought the game was gone. And I thought our lads showed real character in the second half, playing into that breeze, never threw the towel in. I'm as proud of the way that they reacted to that first half, because you could have thrown the towel in, conceding soft scores and then missing on the other side, but they never did. And I'm really happy and proud that they didn't do that, and probably at least deserve the draw out of the game.
Yeah, with the concession of that early goal as well, it looks like the players, because it was a bit of a shock, they started to force the game perhaps. There were a couple of early scores that you could have been taken rather than taking the goals, I suppose.
Yeah, but like, if you're true like those chances are, you have to go for them, right? And we've never discouraged. Like, they're not errors if you're doing the right thing, and missing a goal, we don't ever see that as a mistake. If it's doing the right thing, if taking a shot is the right thing, then we would encourage that. And if it's a miss, it's a miss. So I would never criticise players for making a mistake or having a miss when they're doing the right thing.
Happy enough with the officiating?
I mean, obviously it's a leading question, right? And when you lose, and it's not in any way, we congratulate Galway on their win. That's the most said inside in the dressing room there. We didn't help ourselves with first half performance in particular. And then there were some decisions that went against us, like see the free count, I think it was 20-14. There was a couple, I think Seamus Harnley was looking at it back, but to me, I don't know what you think of it. What's your view on it?
Well,
you had a better view than me. You were up high.
I was up high, yeah. But the thing is, the game like that is obviously we want to know your opinion. My opinion doesn't really count.
Yeah, but sure, I know what you're asking me, right? So, but you guys had a better view on it, so you'd probably be better equipped to call that one than I would be. But to me, it looked like a free. And with additional time, and it's not in any way so great, and I'm not. But I think, look, everyone makes mistakes. Referees are tough jobs. We all make mistakes. We do, players do, officials do, and sometimes you come out the wrong end of some of those mistakes, and it costs you.
Hard to be out of a championship in June.
It is hard to be. Look, could be worse. We were looking at we were going to go out with May, but this is not where we want to be. We came here. We knew we had a really good chance of getting to an All-Ireland semi-final, and that was our target. I think over the course of the game, we did, as I say, didn't help ourselves in that first period in getting there. Thought our second half, we at least deserved the draw out of the game.
Twice you hit the woodwork in the second half and no one followed in. Is that disappointing?
No, I think there's small margins. Like, I mean, you could pick two things out the field and same relevance. So no, I wouldn't have an issue with that. No.
Is there any reason why you think those goal chances weren't missed, or would you have any? I suppose problem with guys taking them on from the angles they took them on, or did you just think to yourself they were great saves?
No, I have to look back in them, but I never discourage guys. If you look back, the narrative on this team not that long ago was we don't go for goals and we take the handy point and we're not going for goals. Now I'm certainly not going to criticise the team, or it shouldn't be criticised when we go for goals when the opportunities arise.
It's hard to take because just that Grealish goal at the start was, I suppose, the difference in the end. And sometimes you just get a bad bounce of the ball, and today I think you got a bad bounce of the ball. Yeah, we just did, Jan, unfortunately, and that's why I suppose we're so disappointed in the dressing room. We're devastated inside in the dressing room. Players are devastated because they put a huge effort into the back room, and players put a massive effort into this campaign. Coming on the back of an All-Ireland final last year, team is starting to grow, getting to a league final again. Okay, disappointing. Two disappointing results in the most championship, but didn't bounce really well. Had two really good games, and I think showed today that there's great character coming into the group, and a lot of young lads, they stood up really well, and I think that only bodes well for them into the future. But that doesn't take away, firstly, from Galway's win, or secondly from our disappointment, because we set high standards for ourselves at the start of the season. Very high standards, to be honest. So we raised the bar, we raised the ceiling, and the next step of that ceiling was getting to an All-Ireland semi-final, and we didn't achieve that, and that's massively disappointing.
One other issue, Kieran, I don't want to be harping on the referee, but there seemed to be a clear 65 that wasn't given, and when you lose a match of that magnitude by a single point, that's very disappointing. It is me.
I was a long ways away. I could see it was 65, you know. I'm sure they all could see it was 65, right? But Seamus Harney one's another one there, you know. But look, there are things. Of course, they could have changed the outcome of the game, but we have to look at ourselves as well in the mirror, and everybody. The lads will often hear me saying, when we go in after a game, we all have to look in the mirror. I'm the first guy to look in the mirror. Right? And when you've talked to the fella in the mirror and he tells you what you did really good or really bad, you can go and talk to the next fella when the fella in the mirror is telling you how good you did. And it's the same for everyone. And same for players and same for officials. We all have to look in the mirror.
Yeah, what about your own future? Would you like another crack at this?
I mean, look, as I say, I just come off the pitch. I haven't washed my hands yet, and I've been in the Galway dressing room, spoke to our players' back room. Now you guys television, so I haven't actually even thought of anything besides our focus was Antrim. After dinner was Galway. They absolutely no thought of anything else but that, and they don't want any, I suppose, speculation around me or anything like that to take away from today's Galway's win or the character which our group showed in the second half, and which I'm really proud of.
There's two types of devastation. There's the devastation from not performing well, and I suppose the devastation from performing well but not getting the result. I would suggest that today for Cork, it's the latter. Does that make it in some ways easier to build for next year for these players, or how does it work?
Well, I think it's the latter by a million miles this time.
Yeah.
And we've been accused of the former many times, unfairly with wrong reporting in many senses, right? But today was the latter, no question about that. Today was the latter, so that's hard to take. Hard to take. Thanks, lads.
It's an emotional dressing room. I presume you'll be asking lads not to make any decisions in the heat of the moment after defeat like that.
Yeah, no different to mentors or players that obviously go reflect, and everybody needs to reflect, because if anybody's thinking beyond the next game, then their focus is not on the next game and the next task at hand. And our focus 100% was on today's game, because we wanted to get to an All-Ireland semi-final. That was our aim, and then take it from there. We didn't achieve it. That's massively disappointing, and we're all devastated with it.
For more exclusive content, go to patreon.com/OurGame. Do indeed sign up for the Patreon show every Thursday. We've brought you Richie Power and Kieran Kingston. The show's been absolutely brilliant. There's obviously match reports there as well. So patreon.com/OurGame. A reminder, this show and every Monday show is brought to you by OurGame. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. We've done a quick little wardrobe change here.
Now listen, we talked about the minor match already, but I still feel that I'm going to probably be wearing this for the next 2 weeks anyway, so I said I'd just start wearing it now. But these boys will be selling like hotcakes on OurGame ahead of the minor final.
They will, and you know what? I wasn't going to do it, but this also from OurGame, this Mayo top here, I was just wearing it socially around Dublin yesterday. I got a few strange looks from the odd dub, but it's a lovely little top as well. And obviously Cavan were playing football yesterday in the semi-finals of the Tailteann Cup, very much centre stage at Croke Park. Now look, let's not focus on the negative of whether the whole occasion was lost at Croke Park, because it's something like 18,000 there. Again, would this have been brilliant in a smaller venue, somewhere sort of midway point for some of these teams? I mean, people say it's a carrot to play at Croke Park. Yeah, I get it. But, surely getting to a final is also a carrot. And maybe that's when you should get Croke Park. But either way, that was part of the lure, or supposed lure this year. Cavan are through. They bet Sligo by 20 points to 114. And Pat Hughes of Sligo has retired after that game. And then also Westmeath beat Joe Offaly, I suppose, well enough, 322 to 216. And it was never really in doubt.
No, the Westmeath won this convincingly. It's even funny just listening to Eamon Fitzmaurice on CoCon with RT. You always want to learn what you're not at the game. Like me and you were at a game. There's things that we see that you don't see on TV. There's also things that we probably miss because we're not seeing it on TV. But you always feel like Eamon Fitzmaurice teaches you something, and it just like in the first 5 minutes he was saying, he's all about the matchups and who's marking who, and I love that, because you want to know what are the man-on-man duels, and he couldn't make out the Offaly ones because they were all switching. They were trying to get Johnny Maloney sweeper. Different lads were picking up different lads from minute to minute, and it was just a bit of chaos in that Offaly defence, in particular in the open stages. Westmeath were, I think, 1-4 to no score up. We kind of got back into it, but it's probably the worst Offaly performance in that first half for a long time, I'd say. And it was a good, open, free-flowing game, but we never really looked like getting back into it, to be fair. And from a competitiveness point of view, it's the best Tailteann Cup final we could have got. I'll put it to you that way. You have Westmeath would consider himself a Division 2 team. Cavan, obviously Ulster champions not that long ago, were Division 1 not that long ago, I think, when Matty McGleenan was manager. It's the best two teams that would probably produce the best spectacle of a final, and it just increases the legitimacy, I think, of the competition, if you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and Cavan put over the first 6 shots that they had. Sligo missed their first 6 chances, and wasn't it 1-4 to nothing that Westmeath were ahead? Now Keith O'Neill scored a nice goal to bring Offaly back into it, but again, when you're 1-4 to 0 behind, there is that sort of catch-up feeling. I'd say the team felt a little bit discombobulated by being, probably feeling very quickly in a game. We've all been out on a pitch where very quickly in a game, you feel like you're the weaker side. You're going to be under pressure. You're playing catch-up, and maybe even for a few players, you feel like your goose is cooked a little bit. It's understandable for any team. 1-4 behind, you're in Croke Park, can be a very lonely place. Still, the team didn't actually give up and fought to the death. Now, the other game was much closer throughout, but it was like I looked at the amount of young players on this Offaly team, lads that were there in the under-20s last year, Jack Bryant, and you'd know them all so much better. But the physical size of them, there's a fair difference between them and Westmeath. But that doesn't mean that this Offaly team in another 2 years' time, when they've had that bit of extra bulking up, that they couldn't compete with Westmeath. No, they did compete with them, but sorry, you know what I mean, go all the way with them.
Yeah, no, and I think the Tailteann Cup was perfect kind of a learning ground for a lot of those 20s to come in. Yeah, they do have a lot of physical work. Like I would have said to you at the start of the year, Offaly in Division 2, I thought they were going to struggle. Like Peter Cunningham was away on a tour of duty, one of our better players. Owen Carroll was away for the year travelling. Owen Rigney did his cruise ship. Like, you're hoping all those players are going to come back in. Unfortunately, it looks like Niall Darby's Offaly career is over. He did his ACL in training on Tuesday night. I believe it was very bad and in front of everybody, like in the middle of drills or something like that. And I believe it was fairly distressing for everybody involved. But I think he told Midland Sport yesterday that he's more than likely finished up now, which is disappointing. At a great Offaly career. And never forget, he was centre back for St. Michael's when we played him in an under-21 final. I was kicking football with Furban, and he came up from centre back and kicked the last 2 points in injury time to win the game. Like, just a real son of Stephen, obviously nephew of Seamus, a real classy footballer. One of these players, you ever notice a lad, he's that classy, he could take, remember someone telling me he could take 10 steps and it would look like he's only after taking 4, because he'd do it real gracefully. Whereas if I took 5, it looked like it was after taking about 20 and I get blown. But just really impressive from a Westmeath point of view yesterday. John Hesden, obviously, as he does, very good, but well chipped in. Sam McCartan, very, very good yesterday as well. Just a really efficient display, you'd have to say, from Westmeath. From a Cavan point of view, they obviously got themselves in a really good position at the start. Sligo fought back into it. Niall Murphy was brilliant off the bench. He couldn't start because of a hamstring injury, and he missed the semi-final, or he missed the quarter-final against Leitrim with an injury. They did well get through that without him. He came on, nearly helped turn the tide, but you'd have to say Sligo were the better team. Garrod McKiernan, very, very good. The two Galligans, good as they always are. The thing about Cavan is they have a lot, when they play well, a lot of lads play well. And it's really kind of an even kind of performance, like that Ulster final performance. Like, everybody played well nearly that day. They don't have maybe a lot of lads that are outstanding. They just have a lot of lads that are playing well or playing really well. And that'll be a really good final, you'd imagine. There should be feck all between the two of them in the final, you'd imagine.
Since you started talking there on that probably 2 to 3 minute rant, you maybe mentioned the names of about 30 different Gaelic footballers. And I'd ask our viewers if they can come in quicker than Michael Verney here. You named, one of the players that you named scored the first ever Hawkeye pint. And the first time that Hawkeye was ever used was because of this player's shot in a Gaelic football match. Now, let's see if somebody can get in with a comment quicker than you did. But do you know who it is?
Like, what sort of time frame are we talking here?
Well, the Hawkeye first came in 2013.
First ever Hawkeye football pint, Janie Mac. No, you have. Yeah,
an
go on.
You're gonna
have to, on a ranking scale, you're gonna have to give me a difficult clue and then an easier clue, maybe.
He's an Offaly footballer. He's still playing, and it was against Kildare in a 19 points to 112 loss at Croker.
Well, sure, like, there would have been very few Offaly lads playing. Like, Niall McNamee would have been like one of the few that would have been playing in 2013. I can't think of too many more that would have been playing, being honest with you.
Peter Cunningham.
Oh, I remember the game. He actually, I think he scored a penalty, did he, at the end of the game?
I will check that. But
funny you say it. I remember it now. Emmett MacDonald was manager. I was actually on that Offaly panel earlier on in that year, would you believe? And until I went back playing hurling.
On the football panel, were you?
I was on it for about 3 or 4 months. Yeah, I was wearing the long coat for a couple of league games, and It didn't look like it definitely didn't look like it was going to see any action. So I called a halt and went back club hurling.
It was actually David Hanlon scored a penalty that day. It wasn't
Rod Hanlon, yeah, that's right, yeah. He did some sort of stupid celebration after or something. That's why I remembered it. Yeah.
Sean O'Sullivan, I remember missing the first hurling Hawkeye, Galway, Dublin and Croke Park just before half-time was getting the pints in. And do you remember when it was set up for Gaelic football for that minor game in 2014, I think, between Galway and Limerick, and Barry Nash had the Hawkeye point that was clearly over, but because it was calibrated for football, it ended up deciding that it was wide, and wide it was given. And I remember looking up at the screen, and they showed the post, and it was like, there. It was, through the middle of it, and it still said wide, and you were going, what is going on here?
It's gas. I was chatting to Eamon Cregan there recently for a piece for the paper, and he brought that up independently, and he just goes, sure, do you remember that time Barry Nash got that point and they said it was ready for football? He's like, come on, lads, you can come up with something better than that. Like, he basically implied that Limerick were getting screwed. It's funny how every county, someone had a comment there about referees being biased. Every referee is biased against their county. Everybody thinks they're getting screwed.
And I have people like messaging me, geez, you're fierce harsh on Galway there, you're fierce harsh on Clare or whatever. Then I said, well, do you not hear me talking about Tipperary? I'm not exactly letting Tipperary off the hook either. So maybe I just kind of say what I think, and you tend to drive a boot in here, there, and everywhere, and often when you don't even mean to. We had a question in there from Joe Butler asking, how does the weekend just gone affect our power rankings? So I don't think we'll go through the entire thing or anything like that, but I'll just bring it up on screen here, and this is what we've had. So left was volume 4, and on the right there is volume 5, our most recent effort. I wonder, does it change all that much? Cork maybe have to slip down a little bit. Obviously, well, sure, Galway beat them. Obviously, they do. Obviously,
can I just say to you, I'm like, every time I stump for Cork, they throw it back at me. Every time I stump for them, they throw it back at me. I'm just gonna write them off henceforth.
Yeah, you did that in 2020 and they proved you right, to be fair. The Winter All-Ireland, you just had no time for them at all.
That's because I thought they'd win the All-Ireland in 2019. And I went all in on them, and then I was all out.
Yeah, and you have been ever since. I suppose just to touch a little bit more on the Tailteann Cup semi-finals, Cavan, 20 points, Sligo 114. The scorers for Cavan, Jared Smith scored 4, Grode McKiernan scored 4, 3 of those frees, Cian Madden with a couple, and a number of other players at a point each. Actually, lots of other players
with a point each. They had a rake of scorers, didn't they?
Yeah, let's see how many had 1 point each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players, I think. Scorers for Sligo then, Pat O'Connor, he scored 1, 2. Niall Murphy with 4 points. Sean Carabine with 3. Pat Spillane with 2. Alan Riley and Pat Hughes, who we've already said is retired.
Cavan had 13 different scores. That is some going in a 20-point tally, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. So, I mean, for Sligo, who you tying down here? You go and tie down one lad and someone else is popping up with a point. Westmeath 322, Offaly 216. Now, John Heslin scored 8, 3 of those frees. But what stood out to me is that lovely point where he went on the loop and lashed it over in the second half was the intensity of the celebration, which to me says, he's up for it here. I'm sure Westmeath have aspirations of trying to close the gap somewhat on Dublin, unrealistic as that might be. But to see that he's celebrating that hard in the semi-final of a second-tier competition, I think that's encouraging for the future of the Tailteann Cup.
Big time, yeah. No, and even Grode McKiernan in his interview after referred to the Tailteann Cup semi-final as an All-Ireland semi-final. And that's what it is. It's an All-Ireland semi-final of the second-tier championship or the B championship. So I think a fair play to all players and management. Like, did you hear of hardly any players leaving squads? I never heard of any managers being negative towards it. I think they all saw the benefits of it. And I just think it's good. It's like say the Epsom Derby. You want to see the best horse win in the race. It's like the Tailteann Cup. You want to see the best 2 teams in the final. With due respect to the Tommy Murphy Cup, you would probably say, a lot of the time the best team. Like we had Eamon O'Hara on the show on Thursday, and he said that they played the Tommy Murphy Cup, and they had to patch together a team because half the squad didn't want to play. So it's good that the Tailteann Cup has not been treated that way. Like he said that they had basically a player vote, and half the players didn't want to play it, and the other half did. So they went off with that other half, pulled in a few more, and played the game basically while half the squad was at home. Like, it's just mad. And like, that competition was never going to last. Whereas you'd say, in fairness, the Tailteann Cup, it's been a good start, and I think there's a 60,000 euros kind of holiday for the winner, which is an all-star scheme. So fairness to them, we weren't sure whether it had been marketed properly and whether it was going to get the traction that it deserved, but it kind of looks like it is, in fairness.
Yeah, and you're saying you want your best players. I mean, you want to watch your GEA show. You want to have a couple of thoroughbreds like us on it as well. You need to have your best players out in front. Actually, this is an interesting comment from Antichrist Atheist Christ. Watched the game a second time last night. Cork scored huge points. The first minute mistake was doing a bit of a Mayo. So that's a bit of a cutting one there, but hard to somewhat dispute. Hey, do you think Niall McNamee will remain on for Offaly again next year? Still, obviously, a focal point. I'm sure he'd still command a starting position. Oh,
he would, of course, yeah. It's gas. Like, he hasn't really slowed down. He's slowed down a small bit, and that's natural. I honestly think even by staying on this year, I think he's done a massive service to particularly the likes of Jack Bryant, Keith O'Neill, and these guys who would have learned so much from him. Don't know. See, there's another question about whether John Mahan stays on, because they're going down to Division 3. It will be his 5th year. He's obviously, like, he had only planned on taking it for a year or two. He's doing huge mileage from Mayo. And like that takes, like, I drive up and down to training a bit now. It's an hour and a half to Burr, and I'd be absolutely wiped out the next day as a result of it. So I can't imagine when you're that bit older, even if you are as fit as John is, and we all know he keeps himself very fit. I'd imagine it takes an awful lot out of you. So, and if he does go, the next appointment is crucial. Do they continue with an outside manager, like has generally been the case in recent times? Does Declan Kelly, the All-Ireland under-20 winner manager, get it? So kind of interesting times to see what happens over the next 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Run through some of the results in the ladies. All-Ireland Ladies Senior Football Championship Round 2. Mayo beat Cavan 16 points to 2-9. Dublin beat Tipperary 111-6. Galway 118, Westmeath 4 points. Cork 212, Donegal 110. Armagh and Meath had a 9 points apiece draw. All-Ireland Camogie Championship, Clare and Dublin drew 1-9 apiece. There's been an awful lot of draws in that group. Cork beat Waterford by 16 points to 10, and Tipperary beat Wexford, keeping the season alive for Bill Mullaney and co heading into the last game against Cork. Cork are already through. Tipper down a lot of players this year. Hopefully Cork rest the team. Davy Fitz might do us a bit of a favour there. You know how much he loves Tipperary. And
if he's listened to the show this morning, he mightn't.
yeah. But that's more what you said. I didn't say a whole pile on that front. So finally, goat of the week. We have to go down that route. Is there anybody that's really jumping out from the 2 quarterfinals? Maybe even, do you know what? You'll probably go for an Offaly minor player, won't you? I'm thinking of a little black bird that you might pick on top of a Canuck.
No, I definitely won't go for an Offaly player because I'm not putting any pressure. I'm not.
Will you at least tell people who I'm referring to?
I'm not going for Dan Ravenhill. I liked what you did there. It took me a couple of seconds. I'm not going to lie. But he was brilliant the other night. But I'm not going to heap any more pressure on him. I just thought Shane O'Donnell was brilliant, particularly in that last 20 minutes yesterday. Like, imagine to say a guy who didn't play county hurling last year, it looked like he might never play hurling again, let alone county hurling. And he's been far better than any other season in the last 10, and there's been a lot of good seasons within that last 10. Looks like he's probably going to get the All-Star that his career deserves, and I'm sure he'd hope for another All-Ireland on top of it as well.
Okay, so who will I give it to? I'm going to give it to Tom Delaney at Tipperary Miners. I'm going to stand up for my team here.
So within one show, you've said Tipperary are going to win the minor, and you've heaped a lot of pressure on one of their players heading into the final. I'm gracias for that. I appreciate that.
Look, these players aren't worried about pressure. Outside influences like us, you trying to play it down, people trying to play it up, doesn't matter. When these boys are out in the field, none of this will matter.
I had a fella from Offaly on to me last week saying, just make sure don't write an article now this week, building up to the semi-final. You didn't want any more pressure.
I'd probably actually, do you know what? Let me change that. I'm going to give player of the week.
No, not at all.
I'm going to give it to Adam Screeney.
No, I'm not taking that one.
And in football, I'll give it to Lorcan Dolan of Westmeath. Scored 2 goals against Offaly. Any day you score 2 goals against Offaly is a good day. And great finish for the second one.
Yeah, I give it to Darren O'Sullivan, Cork lady. I think she scored 1-5 yesterday. She was brilliant over the weekend. There was a draw in that as well. Mead drew with Armagh as well. I think it was 9 points apiece. So the All-Ireland champions, that was a difficult enough fixture for them, but they got through it anyway. Yeah, lots of brilliant performances. Like Lee Chin was brilliant in defeat. Thought Matt O'Hanlon was very good as well. But 2 divisional points. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but 2 absolutely mouth-watering semi-finals set up. Like think about the All-Ireland hurling semi-final weekend. We've the minor final, Offaly versus Tip, Saint versus Verney. We have the 2 All-Ireland semi-finals, one on a Saturday, one on a Sunday. Like that's going to be. I know the hurling weekends are few and far between, but by God, the quality is high.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff coming, and there's a live show coming in Birr a couple of weeks' time, Dooley's Hotel. We're pulling together all the guests at the moment. It's going to be a big show. We'll be announcing full details as we go on in the next couple of weeks, or in the next couple of days. Reminder, we are brought to you by OurGameSupporters.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. There's an unbelievable suite of jerseys there. Get your retro Tip jerseys, Offaly jerseys, whatever county you're from heading into these big games for the rest of the season. Football, hurling, doesn't matter.
Before you go, Sean O'Sullivan, we'll leave this with you. We'll actually let the viewers come up with this. He just said, what will the forfeit be for the minor final? We'll let the viewers come up with, now keep it clean, boys. Like, I've no problem like wearing a dress or doing something like that, but I'm not going like shaving.
I've no problem wearing a dress.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going shaving my head or doing something that is like totally damning to my reputation, but like I'll wear something stupid for the show or something, no problem.
Well, would you consider a sweet fade?
I'm
on it like Damien or like Kevin Martin's young lad.
Killian Martin. I tell you what, let the boys and the girls that watch the show come up with something, and we'll throw it all on the line Thursday before the final.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks very much, folks. We'll be chatting to you again soon.
Cheers, Shane.